opportunity and education for students. These are our member districts. Now, our membership, it works a little bit differently than what you may have experienced in the past. We are on a $25 per person per year membership. And for that membership, you'll get all the services that I'll have on the next slide. But we have school board members from each of these districts that are currently members of the coalition. In addition, although those districts are not listed on this page, we also offer memberships to community members. So you don't have to be a school board member to be in the coalition. And we do that because we believe that educating the community members on what the school board can and can't do, should and shouldn't do, is very important in establishing that partnership so that you can work with your community in the best interest of students. So our services are fairly simple. Policy guidance, which we'll get to in depth in just a second. Advocacy, our members have been trained and are actively engaged with the legislature as they understand the importance of the bills that are being run and how that affects school board members on the front line. So we help our members monitor the education bills as they make their way through the legislative session. We alert our members when testimony is needed at committee hearings. And we also are in constant contact with legislators during the session. Training. We do offer 2 in-person trainings per year. And then monthly, and sometimes like this time of year, it's budget season, we'll do bi-monthly Zoom trainings for our members that are optional. These are some examples of historical training that we have had. We bring in the experts, Auditor General's Office, the Arizona Department of Education. We have had training on counsel, outside counsel versus in-house counsel. When and how should you seek counsel for your board? Parliamentary procedure, those who know the rules rule. And then, of course, school procurement, which can be very complex. Additionally, upcoming trainings we have through May of 2024. I'm most excited about the 2 budget ones. ADE is going to be doing a budget development deep dive to coach our school board members on exactly what questions you as school board members should be asking as you're reviewing and approving the budget. And then we're going to have a session on budget balance carry forward versus cash fund balances, because that's often a point of confusion. So quickly to policy services. That is a screenshot of, if you were to go on our website, you would, and you're a member, you would have access to the policy book. And that is that $25 per person per year membership. That fine print is what's in big up top, and I won't read that to you. I'll let you read that on your own. But our policy services include model policies, policy alerts that coincide with the legislative sessions, of which we do provide training on those new policies as they come on board, in a searchable PDF format that are cross-referenced within the policy book. So policies that triangulate together in some way, shape, or form, or cross-reference, as well as cross-references to the statutes. Here is our table of contents, fairly straightforward and probably something you're familiar with. And this is an example of one of those contents, local governance. Our policies are in numbered format with referencing page numbers. And like I said, it is a searchable PDF format. And so if you wanted to look up all policies related to agenda, you would just search on that keyword and all policies would come up. So policy conversion options. I think it's important to know that either way, you are going to have, regardless of these options, you're going to have custom policies related to your district. I believe that that is the intent for each school district in Arizona, that the school board members are developing policies that are unique to their communities. And so when we get these generic policies that have been spoon-fed to us over the years and don't reflect who we are as a community, I think that's where the disconnects begin. So option 1, I would suggest to you probably doesn't apply. I don't see West-MEC as a district that has out-of-date policies. I've seen some before that have statutory references to statutes that don't exist anymore. Very, very 25-year-old policies that don't reflect reality anymore. I don't think that's you guys. I think that you fall under more of the one-time audit. And the way that would work is that my recommendation, of course, if you guys decide to move forward, we can work out the details, but your policy manual would stay substantially intact. And the coalition, working with staff or a board member as you designate, will do a policy review redlining the opportunities we see. Examples. Statute is, as you know, big on may and shall. Very small words, but have a huge, huge difference in meaning. We often see policies that don't reflect what's said in statute. And if statute says shall, then your policy should say shall, not may. And so we would highlight that for you. We would also propose new policies if necessary. For example, many districts have moved forward with the cash fund balance policy. There is no statute related to cash fund balances and the visibility that a school board should have to those accounts. But we wrote a policy where statute is silent. As you know, school boards can create their own policies as long as it's not in violation of the federal law, the Constitution, or state law. And then we would propose those for you, and we would work with you on that review and listen to your feedback and work together. Of course, since all of the policies are tied to statute, they should be compliant with state law. However, all boards want council review on them, and that is understandable. So you could use your own in-house legal counsel if you chose to do so. Or if you chose to work with coalition legal counsel, we could do that as well. If you chose to use coalition legal, it would be an additional $5,000. We would just pass through those legal services. Yes.
Would we be able to contact you anytime, or would those fees go up as?
For the conversion?
Well, to talk to an attorney about a policy.
Oh, if you have in-house legal counsel, my recommendation would be to use your in-house legal counsel if you have board counsel to do that. We have attorneys that would be happy to talk with you about policies, but you would contract directly with them as a board. Any other questions? Awesome. So here is our contact information. It's got my cell phone, that's my personal cell phone, and email address. I am grateful for the opportunity to talk with you all this afternoon. And if you think of any questions after today, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to open it up to questions.
Okay.
Dr. Spurgeon, I see your hands up, so we'll.
The website or some examples should pull up for us to see what.
Is this connected to the website? Lazy Coalition Network. Thank you. Okay, so always different when you're using somebody. All right, so services. So go across the top, there's the about, membership. We do have active members, our school board members, associate members, our community members. The cost is the same. It just helps us designate in our communications. Here's where you would join as a member. Events. These are upcoming training events. I don't know how to scroll on here. And you'll see those are the ones that were on the slide that you had before. And we bring in outside experts. For example, this procurement fraud and abuse is an outside organization. It's a woman who has served on a school board in Florida, and she happens to be somewhat of an expert on procurement. We had procurement training last year. And it was more at a 50,000 foot level, and we brought in a local Arizona attorney who actually wrote the procurement law. So we try to bring in subject matter experts where possible. Services, there's the train policy services, if I can get to it. And then here is an example of our policies. This is the Parent Bill of Rights. We do watch carefully every bill that's moving through the legislature each session. And if something demands your attention because it just isn't practical for a school board member to enforce at the local level, we will alert you. That happened very recently in this session, and we took a group of 5 or 6 school board members downtown to the Capitol and met with the legislator who was proposing the bill and just explained to him exactly what that legislator was proposing and how it would translate at the local school district level. He was very welcoming, very appreciative, and his feedback was he was going to let the bill die because he was not aware. So we really try to open that communication line. It's because if we can get better legislation, then it's going to make your jobs easier and of course be better for our students. Now I'm stuck.
I do have another question.
Yes.
On these policies, do you paraphrase at all or do you trade directly from statute?
Well, so
It's word for word as
That's
much as you can.
that's a great question, Board Member Booth, and thank you for asking, because if it's a fine line, because you don't want to paraphrase too much and be too general, because that leaves a lot of room for interpretation and a ton of gray. And statute is often very specific. And so we'd like to be as close to statute as possible, but statute can also get very wordy and very lengthy and very burdensome. So what we try to do is paraphrase where it makes sense, that where the detail is critically important, bring it directly from statute. And then as indicated, we always provide the statutory references and ensure those are kept current, so that if you have a question, you know exactly where to go in ARS to find that information. Yes.
One question. Yeah, in your policy making, do you guys do it all in-house or do you consult with other outside groups to help with that?
Well, Board Member Ramirez, we don't make the policies, we write model policies. It's your job as a board to write, you have the authority to make the policy for your district. We follow statute, but as I said, sometimes there are bills, new bills that aren't in statute being proposed. And in some cases such as that, we will work with outside organizations. The other thing that we will do, if it's good for kids, I'll add that, if it's good for kids, because that is the coalition's guiding principle. And as you know, as board members, often you get competing interests and you're forced to make decisions that are very difficult. And I've been there, I understand. And what I learned, and it took me a really long time to learn this, is the last question I'll always ask myself, is this good for students? And if the answer was no, I was a no. And that's how we approach the policy. The other policies you may find, in addition to outside organizations, is if there's legislation that has made its way through Leg Council and the legislature and potentially got vetoed, but everyone thought it was legal, it's just someone didn't like it. But it's good for kids. You might see that in our policy manual as a model policy at all. Of course, there's nothing that forces you to take that on as a board. If you, even as with your current organization, you can still be members of the coalition. You can still get access to all of our policies. And that list of membership that I showed you earlier, many of those board members do belong as a body to a different organization. But they do keep up with our policies and they will pick and choose policies. Maybe they don't have them, or maybe they want to revise one that they already have, and they'll take pieces of our model policies to their board and to their in-house counsel and try to modify their policies that way. So that's another option for you as well.
Thanks.
Of course.
Do you tailor the policy specifically to CTEDs? Cause I mean,
We would need to, absolutely. Yes, we would have to.
I was gonna say, that was gonna be my question, because I was gonna say, we can't provide transportation. And we don't have sports teams, so there's a lot of things that don't apply. But
Correct.
yet we have adult education, so there's things that a K-12 wouldn't have that we would have.
Definitely would have to be considered.
I see one of your coalition members is even, so you can go.
Right. In fact, one of our board members is a board member on EBIT. Our board members, it's the other difference from the organization you may be familiar with, is our board members can be board members on school boards and they can be community members. And what we look for are individuals who have a passion for public education in Arizona
So
and
when-
for students.
so on that list of schools that or districts that were members, you had West-MEC on there. Is that because West-MEC has subscribed or one of our board
One
members?
of your members is a member, yes.
Okay, and can you tell us who that is?
I would leave it up to that member to tell who they are.
Okay.
And the reason why is we ask.
I'm just-
So we asked all of our members, can we use their name? And my ED has on record of that, and I just don't know it all by heart, so I would hate to speak out of turn. So, any other questions? Yes,
So on the members list, is that just members that are members of the organization? And if so, what school districts actually use your services currently?
so I'm trying to get back to that. Those are, we do not at the current time have. We may have one school district out in Mojave County, but these are, we do not have any entire school districts who are using our services. We have individual members of school boards who are using the services. Yes,
How long have you been doing this?
board member, the coalition was founded in 2021. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for your time, and also thank you very much for your service and all you do for students.
Thank you for coming. All right, I guess we'll take a 25-minute recess if we're good with that.
you can sit here and I can sit over here.
Oh, yeah, unless,
Unless you want to use your one.
Oh, that was Jim.
This is it.
I wanted to come.
plugged yours in.
oh, okay.
When I moved it, I'm like, oh.
We can always
wanna
go down the
leave
end.
him high and dry.
Yeah.
We can run it over here.
No, there you go.
I don't need it.
You don't need it? Okay.
No, it's how Peter's things. I really don't use that.
Or you can just move the plug over.
Yeah, I haven't,
And
my situation right now. Oh, was that presented for last year? I wasn't here, I went to.
okay, so he was always nice to try.
Reduce it.
So yours is.
And there were certain $25 to access. I will let say to do this. So he just.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
I just want to make sure you ask, Frank.
Yes.
Yeah, he got a script.
Okay.
I'm gonna hopefully.
And what did I? You can't move them again. And it's progressive.
If I leave my paperwork at home, it's like, I'll put stuff out, like, okay, these are the questions I want to ask on this agenda. And it's like. Yeah, they're. Here.
All right.
It's like, this is. Recommendation.
I mean, it's really that bad. I mean, really, the only thing he could move was one finger. You know, and that was.
To get it should be on the website. Da-da-da-da.
You know, he couldn't read any of it as well. And so.
That's nothing but a loss.
You better know it, and he's already lawyer enough.
But it's really that it's out, but it was just becoming really. That shit lives in the hospital.
Oh, got it for it.
Yep.
You know, yeah. There's always. I just.
When it goes out, it goes out.
So, okay, I just wanted to make sure you got it, and see if you had
Right
any
here, so I
questions.
don't forget, so
Okay.
I will say, introduce this, I am also adding that we're going to pull page 3. And.
Don't have it ready. I've been on the run. I'm excited.
Yes. Checking up, I'd rather 2 people ask than everyone is soon. It's like-
College, and he used to go down and call it fraud. So I have to.
You have uploaded the board meetings for last month in January.
I think he was a little bit, but you know, it's still. Yeah. As he was like 10, 12 years old and starting.
Yeah.
So he's got his friends.
Well, you know what they say when you get so. And I'll show them like just from here. Okay, perfect.
It was.
Okay.
Slideshow.
Camp has actually meant a lot to me. Camp has made me come out of my shell a lot. I'm just
Yeah, we probably need to turn up a little bit because you can't like kids ways up.
This is so.
That
is it. You want to see me for us?
Perfect.
Well,
It's gonna be second project is 3 days.
Yeah, perfect.
Leave it here until you step out.
We'll take that.
I mean, that was, see, it was, you know.
Yeah. What do you want to get done? What do you want to get? Here's $100. Go to the store. No, I'm like, yeah, taking it.
I didn't know anything about this.
Yeah. I have a shirt I'm making it out for my mom. I don't wear it all the time. And it's too thin, but I wear it.
The design.
Well, it's like real big.
I had to visit
Bro,
once,
so it
but
did
it
it
was
was
2 seconds. I had to do some.
and it was my grandpa's. Grandpa's then it was
Yeah,
my
then I wanted to, yeah, it was, yeah, it's like that. I got sick. I was
girls,
really
the family,
sick.
and they, you know, they wanted
It's like
girls.
girls.
I thought for sure I was gonna have. One of them was pregnant, he got my title. I think I'm gonna go like this route now.
So you said
She's got a girl, so I don't want to stay in the family that way. So, yeah, both my boys are pregnant, they're due in July.
my last.
Wait, 2.5 years. I do, I'm happy. Yeah.
So we're not gonna build the whole thing out, we'll probably spend.
I am.
I was just.
And don't wrap around. Eventually, yeah. Yeah. And then your sister. No, that you're really-
I know I need. I can still see, I think it's close range.
I used to have to work on.
Spent the night the other night.
Just. Yeah.
But it was
So dry. I couldn't wear it. So then.
I explained that.
I mean, very funny,
We're 30.
And then it felt like it's sitting up, and if I tried to pull it down, and then it will come, but I was like. You were really here in my head, and you kind of looked, I turned around, and I was like, over there.
Yeah, so I had. One.
I'm like, oh my. No, I see it off, like, oh my god, usually I just let her touch, I just didn't want it.
So that's my goal is to get.
Exactly, yeah. Like I didn't have many hours.
No idea, because I wanted to understand it a little bit.
Oh, I think it was excellent.
Well, I did too, but I just wanted to make sure I understood what you just explained.
Like, wait, still have to.
But I didn't get, did you print it off? I didn't get.
I haven't memorized it, just for the hell of it. No.
Yeah, and I have the agenda up, I just don't see, I don't see the name of the.
How are you, Jan?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, what's going on?
Here it is, Arizona School Risk Retention Trust.
Came from Ethan.
Even.
Really long
If
drive.
you wanna watch it on YouTube, it's.
Traffic was absolutely atrocious.
The other presentation. Yeah, the other presentation. Yeah, so I'll be on the
West-MEC's YouTube channel,
Oh, okay.
Those kids
under the
today,
live tab,
good job. Add.
not the videos, the live, and you'll see everything.
Impression about Even. I think they're doing that.
It's a whole different concept,
Yeah.
and I know the folks that started it, I know Sally well.
Yeah, the
Central concept.
Yeah, the older.
Afternoon, everybody. It's now 4:30 and we can begin our regular scheduled meeting. I will call it to order. As the first item of business, I'll call Frank Quinn up to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, wait, I'm looking at the wrong month.
It's March. You go, Frank.
Yeah.
Well, I just step on. Yeah, good evening, board. I do it, I'm Chad Deck, I'm with the city. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we go into the moment of silence, I would just like to mention that, as a few weeks ago, we lost a voice for education, our fellow governing board member, Dr. Peter Pingarelli. He also served as a previous past chairman. And so as we prepare to conduct our business of the West-MEC Governing Board, let us take a moment to pause and to honor Dr. Pingarelli silently and honor his life, his resilience, his legacy, and all his contributions to the West-MEC community. Please join me in a moment of silence. All right, moving on to item number 3. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda, and to do that, I would also ask that we remove discussion item H3. So the agenda would be as presented minus H3. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Miglerino. Is there a second? I'll second it then. Can we? I wonder if I'm still logged in.
People come up. I did. Oh, it is. There it is.
It might kick you out. It kicked me out. I had to relog in.
Kicked me out, so I just,
If you pause for a certain period of time, it'll kick you out.
well, if you plug it in, I think not, but
Oh, no.
Is it just?
I had it up.
It just times out.
I should follow it, you know. I can't trust them.
I was able to get in.
Just a verbal yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Miglerino, your vote isn't in. Did you vote?
Yes.
All right, it passes unanimously. So let's move on. Summary of current events, Dr. Spurgeon.
Thank you, Chairman Straka. The first thing I want to visit just a little bit about, a couple of weeks ago, we had Leadership West-MEC series, and it was a call to action. There were 3 or 4 experts that came in and spoke on water, infrastructure, redevelopment, and education. Very well attended event, and really the call to action was that we're in a place now where all the roads are crossing for the West Valley. The call to action was, what do we need to do collectively as our own individual group to be able to continue to make West Valley a great place to live, work, and play? And so those 4 areas kind of came together with a call of action to make sure everybody knows and understands how all the parts and pieces fit together and everyone's role and responsibility to make this a great place in the West Valley. So just a great opportunity. Next piece is we had a demonstration with Emerson Labs. Ms. Wiley was able to come and watch those the demos, and I think you were probably pretty impressed as we were. The AI technology is absolutely incredible. It's expensive, but it's incredible. And so we'll work with Emergent Labs to see if there's a way for us to find a place to step off and to do some AI instruction. It's called MetaCoach AI. And so for an example, the demo that we had, it can set up, the system can set up an avatar, and you can make the avatar as nice or as not so nice. In dealing with customer service and professional skills and doing those everyday routines of each of the instructional pieces. And so Ms. Wiley and I got a chance to do the law officer pulled over a person that was supposedly looking at their phone in the car, and you have to talk to this person. And there's a rubric set up, and so there's certain things that you have to be able to do in conversation, or you can't complete the module. And it's like talking to a person standing or sitting just as what we are, because all the information has available to it, and they respond to your response. So if you say X, Y, Z, it comes back and gives you absolutely like a human response. And if you get stuck, you can go, I need some help, and the system will tell you how to proceed. And at the end, it'll give you an overall feedback rubric to tell you how well you did based on what you should have done in the conversation. So it's really cutting edge. Nobody around has that. And so it's something that we're looking into. Like I said, a little expensive, but we're gonna look and see if there's a way for us to get in to do it. More Norman Technology Center out of Oklahoma came into our Southwest campus, and our Northeast campus are looking to expand their facilities, as well as some of the programs that we offer here that they would like to offer there. Tremendous conversation with the new GCC president, Tiffany Hernandez. We got a chance to tour the Northwest campus, and her ideas and flexibility and her ability to be nimble enough to work well with West-MEC was exciting. A breath of fresh air, I think I heard some folks say during the meeting, for us to be able to look and see how we can partner with GCC. Had the great opportunity to meet Dr. Oz, Dr. Oz, the television physician who was in town about 3.5, 4 weeks ago, and he was here to promote some of his curriculum, as well as talk about career pathways that he supports throughout the country. So we're hoping he's going to be back fairly soon to continue to work on ways in which we can work together with the communities and his resources to be able to improve our healthcare systems and deliverables. I attended the Aspiration Awards luncheon, where our communications department received a couple of real nice awards, and so very proud of that team. Attended the GCU President's Educational Advisory Board meeting, and again, Dr. Mueller always looks for feedback from school district superintendents and the folks in the community about things that GCU should be doing now, what they should be looking for in the future. So another good conversation with President Mueller. We had another West-MEC GCU check-in, and I think Mr. Stryker, we talked a little bit about this as we continue to push on working with GCU and doing maybe a co-branding partnership with the IT Security Center possibly. And so we're hoping that we're making strides with that. We'll wait and see how that works out. But, really co-branding with two powerhouses would be an awesome opportunity for West-MEC and GCU, because we know the GCU needs a presence out here in the West Valley. West Valley is only going to continue to grow. So we're hoping that we can be on the cutting edge of making that happen. We've had 2 what we're calling playbook partner meetings. And the impetus for this was from our partnership work with TSMC. We really put together what we think is a model for business and industry to know the steps to take in order to work with CTEDs, with workforce development. Oftentimes, those folks coming in those positions don't really know what to do or where to start. And so we're convening our business partners to write what we're calling a business and industry playbook that will take it step by step with how we put these 2 groups together to create the pipeline of workforce professionals that company's looking for. I'm not going to make it a secret. It's something that should be known, because you waste so much time spinning your wheels and having countless and pointless meetings, where we can just say step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 through 15 or whatever. We can get those things started. And Mr. Garcia was also part of those conversations. They're really good conversations. Nestle, TSMC, Wicker Hospital. We've had several folks that have been in our meetings. So we're really excited about that work, which I'm not sure that it's been done collectively and formally. I think the way we're going to do it anywhere around. So we're pretty excited about that. And then we did a follow-up meeting with Ottawa University, and they still want to start a nursing program. Their parent university, which sits in Kansas, has started that nursing program. But here in the West-MEC area, they don't really have the facilities to be able to offer a full-time nursing program. So we've been in conversation with the president, Dr. Tyner, and our possibility of us allowing them to use some of our facilities in our nursing program after hours or beyond hours, to be able to see if we can put together a nursing program. And Banner Health has also been a part of those conversations. So just a lot of things going on, a lot of great things happening. And so we're excited about this.
So on that, could our kids get credit from Ottawa as part of the deal, or have we talked about something like that?
That was one of the conversations that we had, because I don't know, and Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe Ottawa gives us any dual credit currently right now. That was one of our big asks, is that it's easy to matriculate into a program in which your credits already count towards. Oftentimes they go to Maricopa County and they'll pick up those credits and they'll matriculate into a GCU or University of Arizona or ASU, and also into Ottawa. So we're hoping to be able to give our students a leg up if that's possible to offer. So those short answers, yes. We're asking.
That's
Long answer is yes. We're asking. That's all I got to answer.
Right, governing board reports. I'll start with Mr. Garcia and we can work around.
Just working on the playbook with West-MEC. A lot of great conversation, a lot of bringing out that alignment of education academics to industry pipeline, and then to describe how that pipeline is enforced and how we can unplug the pipeline. So we spoke a lot about that. Had a lot of discoverables.
Yes.
Things that we discovered in the conversation, I think is gonna help us as a school, making sure that we can do the best we can for those students to get into those fields. A lot of other conversations, but it kind of ties into my day job, so I'll leave that right there.
Yeah, Mr. Straka, the other thing I was gonna mention with what Mr. Garcia said was, I tell everybody, we can't be everything to everybody, we can be everything to somebody. And so we recognize what we do well at West-MEC, and that's what we're going to do. And if you recognize as a business industry to make sure you go to the right people in the beginning that can help serve your needs, then it just cuts out a lot of red tape and a lot of time wasted.
Ms. Bosom, Mr. McLarino.
Good.
Well, like I said, I forgot that I was at, I have to, I'll go a little bit further. They had AI person up there. And the guy that owns the company was trying to satisfy this irate person who had a facial, and she was broke out. She was really unhappy and she was very angry. And he worked with her 2 or 3 or 4 times and could not satisfy that woman. And in walks, well, who was it?
Farmer.
Yeah, the teacher. And we told the owner of the company, said, well, there's the teacher who teaches that maybe she can satisfy this AI person who is obnoxious. And she got on it and she was so calm. And she just went very slow on how she would treat her and what she would do. And after, I think it was the 3rd try, the AI person said, okay, I'm satisfied. Thank you. I'm still wondering, how did, I don't understand it. It's unbelievable. It was.
No, nothing.
I would just add, I know there's some questions about vacancy. And Ms. Louisa got me some information. Basically, what happens is we will advertise on our website that there is now a vacancy and you can apply. Based on what we know from Steve Watson at the county superintendent's office, when there was a vacancy at Peoria, he interviewed all 22 candidates. Last time we interviewed candidates, I think it's a duplication of effort. He's going to make an appointment based on his interviews. So we could interview and make a recommendation, but I don't think, in the interest of your time, I would say, let's let just Mr. Watson do the job. And I don't expect if 22 people applied for the seat, I would be stunned. I think if we get 2 or 3, that's gonna be the upper limit. But that will progress. We're advertising it, we're doing our part, and we'll just direct anyone who applies with us towards also the county school superintendent, and he'll make an appointment in his timeline. I don't know what it's gonna be because that seat is up for election and there's 2 people running, and I don't know if he really wants to give one person a leg up on an election. And so there's things for him to decide, but that's all I know. Second is Dr. Spurgeon and I and CJ toured the Southwest campus with one of Mr. Watson's opponents. And in all fairness, they're allowing anybody who's running to tour a West-MEC campus, so we impressed the candidate, so all is good.
Good visit.
My laptop turned off again. Anybody else, anything? All right, moving to item O. Well, to the public. I have one person that would like to address the board for a non-agenda item. Karen Rusano.
Carol, can you read the statements on the agenda item for?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And this is the time for public comment on matters that may interest the board. Members may not discuss the items that are not specifically identified in the agenda. That is therefore pursuant to ARS 38-431.1. Action taking as a result of public comment will be directing staff to study matters to respond to any criticism or scheduling future consideration at a later date. And I'll leave it there.
Good afternoon, governing board members and Superintendent Spurgeon, Dr. Spurgeon. My name is Carol Rossano. I work at the district office in the Student Services Department. I've been with West-MEC for 8 years. Our health insurance benefits are comparable to what I had in my previous employment. Health benefits are essential to all employees, and I hope we can preserve and maintain health. I heard our insurance costs have increased this year, primarily due to free health care to families. While this is a very generous offer for employees and their families, remember that over half the employees whose insurance costs are much less for the district do not receive this extensive benefit. Individual employees should not be penalized for the increased health costs and be at risk of losing a better health plan. If you choose a company that offers co-insurance at 80%, 20%, we'll be insured, but it'll be too expensive to utilize. Employees will still be responsible for 20% after they meet their deductible. 20% costs add up. Health insurance is ineffective if they can't afford to utilize it. Please consider what's best for all employees when making health benefits decisions. Maintain health is good for everybody. Thank you.
Any other calls to the public? Last time, any other calls to the public? I believe I have to ask 3 times. All right, moving on to information items. Glendale Union CTE program update. Ms. Tracy Mayfield, welcome to the stage.
Hi, good afternoon, Superintendent Spurgeon, Chairman Straka, and members of the board, and everyone else. I'm Tracy Mayfield. I'm the CTE curriculum coordinator for the Glendale Union High School District, and I'm happy to be here to present our district update. So within the 9 high schools, the 9 traditional high schools we have in Glendale Union, we're proud to offer a total of 22 different CTE programs. That in conjunction with the central campus offerings from West-MEC, we really do feel that our students are able to find any sort of passion and interest that they love and can pursue in high school. So I want to kind of spotlight some of the ways that West-MEC has helped our district. So through fun pictures, right? Obviously, the first way that West-MEC has supported Glendale Union is through the CTSO chapter award. The time the students spend within their CTSO is some of the most valuable time that they can spend in high school. The practical experience in leadership, public speaking, teamwork, and problem solving are skills that are essential for career readiness. We were actually this year able to utilize one of the West-MEC additional grants to start our own in-district CTSO officer training camp. And rather than talking about it, we had our Greenway High School film and TV program kind of create a quick video. So let's show that instead.
This camp has actually meant a lot to me. The camp has made me come out of my shell a lot.
Just taught us how to, learn and work in an environment that we're not used to.
Friendship and how valuable it is.
Think outside of the box. Always ask others for help. It's okay to ask for help.
Team bonding.
Cooperate and communicate well with others.
I got to know more about my role in the club.
Let's know it's okay to be embarrassing.
I got to know more about leadership.
All the activities and workshops we did that really highlighted what it meant to be a leader.
Swing around front, let me inside.
playing my song, painting my sides, it hurts, I can't lie. Remember those times I fought to get out, I want to get out. Those pictures so clear, made in my mind, leaving me here with ashes and fire. These people don't heal, the people don't feel, the people are real, so make me the steel. Won't you give me love, give me love, give me love, give me love.
So as you can see there, we're gonna go ahead and continue camp.
So this camp has actually meant a lot to me. Camp has made me come out of my.
That's always the problem when you embed videos. They're just gonna keep going. But it was a great experience. We're gonna do camp again next September. For a lot of our kiddos, that was the first opportunity they had ever had to have a sleepaway camp. So not only was it fantastic to build those leadership skills and the team bonding, but heck, just to get a group of kids outside of Phoenix is just a fun time for all. Additionally, West-MEC's able to support us in making sure that we have industry appropriate equipment. And so one of the newer programs that we have in Glendale Union is sports medicine at 3 of our campuses, Apollo, Sunny Slope, and Thunderbird. Apollo is the most recent add to that program. And so the pictures you see in front of you now are from Apollo High School, and those kids, it's kind of hard to tell in the pictures, but they're utilizing what's called Game Ready. And Game Ready is a system, and I gotta get it right because my sports med teacher would have my head. It's a modality that performs cold and compression therapy at the same time. And so this tool allows our sports med kiddos to demonstrate an understanding of therapeutic interventions and pain management skills. So basically what it has an attachment for wherever the injury is, and they can just add that, and then it's going to run that cold water and the compression for a period of time. They actually can adjust both the temperature and pressure for whatever the injury has. So that's that. Another use of some of our West-MEC funds is we went through a film and TV remodel at Independence High School. And so the studio previous really was not up to standards. And so this, over the course of last summer, we were able to remodel that facility. Another newer program to the Glendale Union District is home health. It is the most recent ad is at Glendale High School, which is why you see that pictured there. And so that used to be an art classroom, and now it is a home health classroom. And I believe we have a total of 4 patient stations in there where kids can practice getting folks in and out, taking vitals. Of course, a bathroom that simulates what they would find at home as well. Additionally, we are able to utilize West-MEC support through offering industry certifications to our students. In the last school year, we had 1,746 certifications received by our students. Some of those certifications are spotlighted there. Of course, these certifications are a testament to the rigorous high quality and training provided by our CTE programs. So I just want to thank you for your time, your support, and your commitment to the future of our students and our community. We look forward to continued years of shared success and challenges met with determination and opportunities. With that being said, I don't know, am I supposed to ask if you guys have questions? If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions from the board?
All the students, the ones that went up north, was it all of them? Or?
It was not all of them. Unfortunately, last year, when we decided to do this, it's actually quite difficult to find a camp location. And so it happened probably the second weekend we were in school, and we weren't able to get everybody kind of wrangled up and had their officer elections in time. So at the very end of the video, it showed that we are moving it back to September 20th this year to be able to give more chapters time to have their official officer elections and then bring everybody up there.
Yeah, you have to reserve some of those places almost a year in advance. It's brutal.
It is brutal. And then once, apparently once you lock in your weekend, that's yours. And so you have to, I don't know, wrestle to get a different weekend, or at least I guess that's what I will do if I need to move it again.
Yep. So I have a question, and Mr. Welch can probably give me more context if I go off the rails, but several years ago when Glendale Union presented to us, we had discontinued like the automotive program or something because the equipment was outdated. Were you able to get that equipment updated, and how did you go about doing that? Did West-MEC play a role? Could you shed some light on that?
For automotive specifically?
And I think it was at Cortez High School.
So we do not have automotive at Cortez High School. At Cortez, we do have an up to industry standard welding program. We have construction, film and TV, coding, and home health. It is one of our smaller campuses. It's actually a campus that has only about 1,000 students at this time. So we do not have automotive at any of our locations.
Okay. Was that because the equipment got outdated and we need help, we need to provide help, or could you remember that? This was several years ago.
Office at that time, but I think it's a combination of factors, of course.
Okay.
It's of course, equipment costs, declining enrollment at that particular high school can be difficult as well. So I think there were a few things that go into a decision like that.
Okay. And then I just have an off the wall question. Can you go back to the schools and the logos?
Sure. So we have 9 traditional high schools and then our online learning academy.
And this is the one I see, and there always seems to be conflict. Some NFL teams let you use their logo and others say it's a copyright infringement. Is that the Cardinals logo? Do you guys have permission to use it?
It is, we have, in fact, we went through everything on our logos. We did the double checks. Yes, everything is legit and we are legal, so.
Okay. Because Kayenta used to use the Redskins logo up in northern Arizona, and they had permission. And I'm always curious how, because some school in the valley got called out by North Carolina for using their MC and colors. So always curious how, but you've done the research. So it's not the first time someone's asked that question.
It's not the first time, and in fact, some of our logos have been revamped recently.
Yeah, my daughter is on there and it's been revamped since I went back in the 80s.
Which school is that?
Men's.
Okay, so I'm in Valley Broad and I will not hold that against you.
I went to Cortez for a semester, so.
See, all the best, all the best. Thank you, everyone.
Question next, yes. With the certifications, are you guys tracking that? Is it trending upward, flat, down, and also?
Absolutely trending upward. In fact, I'd say in the last 2 years, we've seen substantial growth. I can't give you a percentage off the top of my head, but we have, especially in the areas of coding, we've been able to add several more certifications. So we're on the uptick for sure.
Also, are you also tracking which ones are industry required versus just good to have certifications?
Well, following this guidelines from the state and the approved industry certification list.
Okay.
Do you have any way, because it's our big, as a board, we always ask this, how do we track our students when they leave to track success? Do you have any secrets on tracking students, or are able to track the success, or?
So we utilize our career center specialists to complete the post-secondary survey, that 6-month period of time after graduation. The secret of our success, I think everyone struggles with hunting down people after graduation. We try to keep tabs of them within alumni groups and social media, and then of course those formal ways within that post-secondary survey.
All right,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
Of course.
Kind of funny story, so we had a hard time tracking our students down in my previous district before. And one student could make a big difference in graduation rate, whether you got the full 30 points or you got less than that. And so we happened to find a student that was on the Jerry Springer show that needed to come back and finish. The number it saw and had contact, made the contact, the student came back and finished. So that's how hard they are to find. Sometimes they just disappear, but it takes diligence to find them.
All right, I think I got kicked out again. Mr. Welch, recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. Chairperson Straka, Dr. Spurgeon, governing board members. I tell you, I think in all honesty, Dr. Spurgeon has given me the privilege tonight to talk about these celebrations as a way to pull at my heartstrings and get me to stay even longer past retirement. So it's my honor this evening to present you with a couple timely celebrations. And the first one, I really want to thank the board and Dr. Spurgeon for having the vision. This is a very first for West-MEC, starting an Employee of the Month, where we're going to honor all employees, starting with some teachers, but honoring all staff regularly through a process, really at the request of our board and Dr. Spurgeon. So thank you for being student-centered in your vision and allowing us this opportunity tonight. So for the very first time, West-MEC's Employee of the Month, we want to present to you Ms. Haley Adams. Haley, no one epitomizes this award and a person of the month more than Haley. Haley started our vet program for the entire district, one of the first teachers at the Northeast campus to start that campus off, and has continued to demonstrate incredible leadership. We talk a lot about work-based learning opportunities. Haley's instrumental in creating those opportunities for students at clinics, where they work in shelters and get real life experience, and emotional moments for pet owners and those types of things. She consistently has the highest TSA scores in vet across the state. Her students earn, record number of credentials every year on placement and follow-up surveys. Her students respond to us, so thank you. And they respond with positive data where they're continuing their education or they're placed in the field. Haley contributes more than at West-MEC, but at the state. She represents health career educators as president of that association and serves on the state board, really planning all the activities for all those teachers, hundreds of teachers at the summer conference every year. And then when we needed her most and we were down a teacher, Haley and her partner teacher, Britta, who's not here this evening, they jumped in and took that classroom. So she took on an extra class and extra students for a year to make sure that students were served. I can't think of anyone finer to epitomize and earning this award for the very first time. So Haley, congratulations and thanks for all of it. I think we'd like to get a picture with the board and Dr. Spurgeon, if that's good, and Mr. Cook's gonna grab that for us. I'm gonna let you stand here with Dr. Spurgeon and share that. And please, board members, you guys, I'm short, so I'm gonna hide in the back and you guys get up there with our teacher.
And you're getting a student.
All right.
I met him.
1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Thank
Congratulations. Thank you.
I'm surrounded.
I know. Well, not to continue in celebrations, not this evening, but a future employees of the month, I can guarantee you will be these next two individuals. And I just learned about their good effort. So many of our teachers are these quiet heroes that just do things thanklessly without us really even knowing about. But our next two guests, I'd really like to welcome Miss Dorothy Whitman and Miss Sylvia DeLuenta. If you guys want to come up here, please. So Sylvia here in the green scrubs and Duddy in the colored, scrubs. This is our MA teacher and dental teacher at the Southwest campus. They recently participated in Buckeye Compassion. So it's a group of faith leaders that really organize community services for health and dental needs, these kind of needs for the community. So some of our faith leaders will use a school facility, an elementary school facility, and invite people in. And they get some volunteer dentists, doctors, but they need so many of the support help. And so both of these fine ladies and their programs connected our students to these opportunities to really run a full clinic. So for an entire day, our students ran this clinic, and we're not talking about just, you know, oh, let me clean your teeth a little bit, but like extractions, everything. And then not only in MA was it, hey, your blood pressure is a little high, you know, like my doctor, oh, you should go read about that. No. They sent the students, hey, your blood pressure might be a little high, go sit with this person and they're gonna educate you. And they did really patient education and stuff at this event. The Buckeye Chamber recently acknowledged it and really thanked West-MEC for this participation, but we wanted to honor them and share their story with you this evening.
This was on a Saturday. That's and so students, and I had 2 students from Gila Bend that drove. Oh my God. And stayed until the end. So this is how dedicated our students.
Did they really like it?
They loved it.
I would like to share some of my students when they actually, because we had our first year and second year students with us, and the first year students were so moved by actually being able to help patients. And they were so moved by the patient's kindness that they actually got emotional, were crying. Oh man, oh my gosh, these patients, it was really moving. And this is the second year we've been able to work with this organization. So I'm looking forward to working with them a lot more. They do it annually, and we serve over 100 underserved people in the community. So it's a fabulous outreach program. It really is a great opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you for doing it.
And the students are watching right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can see how difficult it is to pick an employee of the month with amazing folks like this out there. And then finally this evening, right, while our teachers are the ones making the difference and our campuses are making the magic happen. You know, occasionally those of us at corporate office really do some heavy lifting to make their jobs easier and remove hurdles. One of those things is to put equipment in classrooms so that students have more hands-on learning opportunities, so that when they go into work-based learning experiences, they're ready for it and they perform just like these students that you saw here. So we really this evening wanted to acknowledge Jarrett Guy and Julie Rodriguez. You guys stand up. Jared, they'll come up here as I talk about them. Jared and Julie really have kept the tradition alive here at West-MEC, working with the Arizona Commerce Authority and Office of Economic Opportunity to secure some extra funds. So we thought we were gonna lose it, but I heard today we have it. So I was worried, but we got it. So we got the call today that we received a grant for $270,000 to really buy equipment specifically for our water treatment program and for our energy manufacturing systems program to just strengthen that pipeline and that talent that we have here in the Southwest Valley specifically. Really, and that was the work of these 2 people. So I just want to thank them this evening and acknowledge what they've done to increase hands-on learning opportunity in the district. So thank you. Thank you.
All right, Miss Mays, that's a tough act to follow.
Yes, it is. Oh my gosh. Okay. Good evening, Chairman Straka, members of the governing board. At the governing board's request, it was asked of me to submit to you all the plans that were under review for next year for health insurance and benefit plans for our West-MEC employees. And the reason for that was to give you all an opportunity to read through some of that information, ask any questions that you had of me. And then that way, when we do bring it or bring the plans to you for a vote, you would be more well-informed when you're making a decision, and you don't have to feel rushed like we just presented it tonight, now you gotta vote. So hopefully you had an opportunity to read through the plans that we presented to you. But I also wanted to, and those 3 plans, by the way, were ASBATE, which is our current plan, or Meritage, High Ross, and Valley Schools. So those were the three plans that were presented to you. So, with that, we also had a group of West-MEC employees. They were the Employee Benefits Committee. And I think a couple of them are in the audience right now. If I could ask you all to stand and be acknowledged. Thank you. This group got together once per month and they did the hard work. They did the heavy lifting. They reviewed plans. They asked lots of questions. They helped me put an employee benefits survey together. And they also gave lots and lots of input in terms of the benefits that they would like to see for our employees for next year. So again, thank you all so much for your hard work. I'm gonna switch over to the benefits survey so that I can give you members of the governing board some feedback from our employees as to how they feel about our benefits program and what they feel is important to them moving forward for next year. It was a 9-question survey. We had 113 responses out of 214 employees in the district and 188 employees that are benefits eligible. So I think it was a pretty good return to get this information. So the first question was, what do you like most about our current benefits program? As you can see, overwhelmingly, which is no surprise, family coverage at no extra cost is very important to our employees. Second to that, they really enjoy our copay gold and our copay buy-up plans. And then from there, affordability and the HSA account contribution. The next question was, what do you like least about our current benefits program? The highest response that we got in terms of what they liked least was they felt that we had a somewhat limited hospital network. Right now, we are in the Banner Aetna system, but we did hear from ASBE that employees can go outside of that particular network. It just is a higher tier and it may cost them more out of their pocket to do so. But they do have access to additional hospitals and various networks. Aside from that, there was some concern about the varying rates based on years of service. Right now, our benefit plans are structured where if you were hired before 2020, there are certain premiums that you pay, certain benefits that you get, like in terms of your HSA contribution. And if you were hired after 2020, it's a different premium. So for some employees, they felt that that was a concern, that it wasn't consistent. Other than that, the 3% employee contribution, which is the employee's skin in the game. Some employees felt that the employee only cost should be at 100% for the from the district. And then the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 plan design, that basically, as I said before, is whether or not you go in network, out of network, or through the expanded networks. For some employees, that was kind of confusing because when they go to a doctor, they expect to pay a certain amount. And then if they find out that they're in a different tier, they get a different bill, that sort of thing. So for some of them, they felt that was somewhat confusing. If you could add an additional benefit to our current benefit program, what would that be? Overwhelmingly, it was discounted home, auto, and rental insurance. So for the rest of these insurance products that you see on your screen, they're relatively easy to add as options for our benefit plans because all of these are employee paid. They're not, it's not an additional cost to the district. They pay for those premiums out of their paycheck. So we will look into those if we decide to, with whichever provider that we use moving forward. So then we asked them to rate their satisfaction. How would you rate Meritain, which is our current provider, overall? For most of our employees, they're in the 4 to 5, with 5 being the highest, 0 being the lowest. Most of our employees are satisfied with the Meritain plan.
You said that was for 100 employees?
113. How would you rate Meritain Vision? well, kind of more middle of the road. And I think that that's because the current plan that we have is what's called the reimbursement plan, which is where the employee has to actually pay for the eye exam or for the glasses or whatever. Then they have to fill out a form and then they get reimbursed. Whereas with some of the more traditional vision plans, it's you would give them a card, they automatically look you up and they apply the benefit. So I think that's what kind of caused a little bit of a lower ranking there.
I had the vision with West-MEC for a while, and I will say, you have to send your receipt in within 30 days or they won't pay the claim. And if you go talk to your eye doctor, they'll give you the same rate if they don't have to deal with the insurance. So it's almost like a it's kind of really kind of confusing because I just ended up, I can get about the same thing. I pay $40 for an eye exam and I pay $200 for a pair of glasses, whether I have insurance or not. And so some of that I would love to see. And I know I'm kind of interrupting your flow, but for some of this, is there a way to kind of out of market, in market comparison?
Well, we actually did have that conversation with our current provider, and they can give us a more traditional plan. If that's what we want to just kind of move on to a different plan. How would you rate Delta Dental? Overall, about 67% of our employees are pretty satisfied with our dental plan. How would you rate Aflac, which is our short-term disability provider? Kind of middle of the road there, but keep in mind, this is an employee paid benefit. And so if an employee never has to use it, then, they may not necessarily rate it as high. But it is a bit of really, really good benefit to have for employees, just in case they don't qualify for FMLA, for example, and they have a pretty serious medical incident. The Aflac program would protect their income and give them a benefit depending on how much they would like to have themselves covered. So kind of middle of the road there. How do our benefits compare to other employers you've worked with? Comparable or outstanding, somewhat better, inadequate. So most of our employees feel that our benefits are definitely a bonus for working here at West-MEC. Is there anything related to the benefits package that you're unclear about? How to access benefit programs and services? So what that said to me is that when we do go through our open enrollment next year, we are going to have to make an extra effort to do more outreach to educate our employees. So I'll be working with whatever provider that we select to make sure that we have them come in and help our employees make the right decision. Then second to that was a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 provider structure. As I said before, some employees get a little confused by that. So it is a cost saving measure, but again, for some employees, this is just a little inconvenient. And then 3, vision benefit is a reimbursement program. We just talked about that. So those were the questions that I asked the employees, just to give you a taste of some of their feedback. We will be making a recommendation to the governing board from the employees of what they would like to see for next year when you are ready to take that vote. I am assuming that it'll probably be at the April meeting. So at that meeting, I will have more financial information in terms of the cost of the various programs. And you can always call me or email me if you have individual questions. I'd be happy to answer.
Just one question for me. You're going to gather information from the people there were 3 companies here.
Correct.
And will you get that information back quickly so that it doesn't come in? What is our April meeting? 6, 7?
We actually already have it.
Oh.
Yeah, we already
My
have the
question
rates.
is due?
Yeah.
Thank you.
A question about the tiers. Is that referring to, are there 3 tiers within each of the 3 plans? Or is that, okay? I don't know where that.
Do you have the breakdown of the employees that like Maritime versus years of service? And the reason I ask this, and Mr. Miglioriano, you will remember this. when our previous superintendent was here, if people didn't pick the gold plan, he would call that bad health insurance, substandard health care. And so a lot of employees have this vision of, if I don't get the copay plan, because they heard for many years, anything else is bad. So my concern is, we have employees that have been here more than 2 years that heard regularly bad health insurance. And I'm thinking, if I heard that several times as a board member, and you recalled these conversations, has that been influenced? Because the question I had asked was, when I look at the HDHP with our contribution to the HSA, the max out of pocket was $1,000 less than the max out of pocket for the gold plan. Why wouldn't an employee that doesn't go to the doctor very often not pick this? Because if they don't hit it, they're banking thousands of dollars a year. And the answer was, it's substandard healthcare. And so I want to make sure the employees really think all plans are good. How would you address that?
So to your point, Mr. or Chairman Straka, similar to what Ms. Rosano said, for some employees, it's the concept of the 80-20 split on the HDHP versus the copay plan. The copay plan, they pay a copay and they're pretty much, it's a much more defined plan where they can figure out what their costs are. But in an 80-20 split situation, depending on your medical care costs, that could be a huge financial impact to them.
But either way, they're gonna have the 80-20, and within HSA, they have money to pay that 20%. And that's where I don't think they realize that they're getting a couple $1,000s to start, where they have to take that couple $1,000s out of their pocket. So I think there's some education.
You're correct. You are correct.
The other thing I'd like to see is, I didn't hear it mentioned, but some employees, if they hit 65, they're eligible for Medicare. My cousins tell me how great Medicare is. It would be nice to see an option where we would pay for their Medicare, whatever they call that, supplement, instead of our insurance, because I can't imagine the supplement is as much. And if they could get better coverage as an option through Medicare, I'm just trying to mitigate our loss. Because let's let Medicare pay for those and we'll pay for the supplement. And then the same thing I would say is, are there employees that they might have chosen their spouse's insurance is better? I'm not gonna sign up for West-MEC. Is there a vehicle where we could provide a supplement if they prove that they're on a different plan, $400 a month stipend or something to pay for? Because I know from my own personal experience, me and my wife both had insurance paid. I think mine was $100 a paycheck, hers was $25 a paycheck for coverage. We had individual deductibles. If you're together, you have one deductible. Has anyone chosen like not to participate so they can have a combined deductible for a family?
That's a great question, and I can research that for you. The only thing I did here is, one of the directives was that we needed to do some research or do some canvassing to find out, you know, if an employee did have a spouse on a different plan, we had to more or less prove that they could come on our plan, because either they didn't have insurance. It couldn't just be, I want both insurances so I could.
Right.
You know.
And same with kids. It's like, hey.
Exactly.
So on that, people together, you know, maybe roommates, they may be in a relationship. How do we determine that, hey, I've added my partner versus they're not just a roommate?
It's a good question, because we go by whatever is on the enrollment form. We don't necessarily ask for additional documentation, but it's something that we could look at.
I'm happy to provide a partner, but I don't want to find out, hey, if you put me on your insurance, I can save $200, $300 a month and I'll pay you $200 or something. And I want to provide it where it's and not somebody trying to game the system.
Understood. And that's definitely some discussions that we can have when we bring it to the board and bring the financials. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stratton.
I do have a question as far as the copay, how much is the copay?
You'd like the deductible
Yeah,
or?
well, you know, because we had a copay gold standard,
plan.
Right. So what is? I want to say it depends on the cost of the service and where you're going, whether it's tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. So it is gonna vary.
Okay.
So it could be, anywhere from, paying a $20 copay for a doctor's visit all the way up to like, I don't know, $200, $300, $400 for an MRI. It really just depends on the service. But employees really do like that plan though. They're very, very supportive.
Can you back up to the survey that we compared, or the page where we compared our coverage to others, what they,
This one?
back up a little further. Before that.
Delta, parent. This is
Um,
vision.
our, how much we pay versus other employers page.
Oh, that's a different.
Was that a different, what I wanted to see is, do other employers that pay the base and you have to buy up to any plan, or they provide any plan regardless of cost?
I don't think we broke it down that far, but
Okay.
that, that would be something that we could ask.
Yeah, because I know, I hate to always pick on PV, but that's where my wife works, and they pay for the HDHP, and if you want any other plan, you can buy up and they only pay for employee.
They pay 100%.
100% of employee at the base, and then anything else you can buy up. And so, I mean, I don't think the employees would be happy with we're gonna pay 100% of base and you can buy up, because I think that'd be much more expensive than the 3%.
It would be. That is correct. But again, these are conversations that we can hash out when we go over the financials. I just wanted to make sure you all at least had some initial information. And please give me a call if you have some specific questions out.
Thanks for putting this together.
Thank you.
Item number 4, information future apprenticeships. Mr. CJ Williams.
Good evening, Chairman Straka, members of the board, Superintendent Spurgeon. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm hoping Jared's walking up behind me. He's part of this.
Slowly.
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. Earlier in the school year, it was asked for a follow-up presentation on apprenticeships. What's West-MEC doing with apprenticeships? There's a lot of conversations circling out in the ecosystem around apprenticeships, a lot of different agencies trying to be first to figure out this apprenticeship formula. And West-MEC really partnering with workforce, with industry, with municipalities, has been approached in pretty much every avenue possible around apprenticeships, because we are a natural connection for individuals to an apprenticeship. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and hopefully answer some questions that you have. But first and foremost are those statewide initiatives, and you'll see on the screen that out of the Department of Education and Arizona Education Economic Commission, bringing those education leaders and industry leaders together to prepare the future workforce. Apprenticeship really surfaced quickly. And out of the Arizona Education Commission, what they've really landed on is this idea of professional career onboarding programs, what they're referring to as PCOPs. And the reason is it allows them to create these pathways with a lot less red tape, a lot less bureaucracy, a lot less federal approval. So that is something that's moving forward through the AEEC. Additionally, it's prompted a conversation amongst the career and technical education districts around, as a statewide system, is there a connection or an offering of apprenticeships that we would like to provide across the state? So we've engaged the curriculum consortium to at least help explore those options and what that might look like. And likely that could be a youth apprenticeship, with Jared will define here in a little bit. I'm going to set all kinds of expectations for you. The last is, or not the last, another one is the governor's challenge and proposal to double statewide the number of apprentices in the trades. And that is the Build It AZ plan that really is got the Office of Economic Opportunity engaged, the Workforce Arizona Council engaged. We were represented on some of those committees that developed that plan. And certainly that aligns with what we're doing in our trades programs and some of the connections we're making there. So you'll hear a little bit about the different options and avenues that we can take. We have found great success really in developing these articulation agreements where our experience at West-MEC would count toward a full registered apprenticeship program. And that's where we have had success, and we look forward to kind of replicating that model in other areas. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jarrett to walk through some more of the technical aspects of apprenticeships.
Okay, before you start, could you just real quick, what's AEEC stand for?
The Arizona Education Economic Commission, and that again was born out of the Department of Education to really bring business and education together to develop the future workforce.
One of the stumbling blocks has always been age. Is that taken care of?
It depends, but I will,
Sounds like that.
It depends, and we'll talk about, so I'm gonna talk about the different types of apprenticeships, which age comes into the different types, but with the youth apprenticeship opportunities that CJ referenced statewide is to get over some of those age gaps that a traditional registered apprenticeship, there is the limitation of 18 and over for those types of registered apprenticeships. But the youth apprenticeship avenue, which is where there's a lot of initiative right now to create those models, opens the door to that 16+ age group. But I'll talk about that in just a minute. Just to kind of frame, as CJ talked about kind of these statewide efforts, we want to kind of hone in on where West-MEC fits in and where's the avenues that we're creating opportunities where we can best onboard our students into these apprenticeship pathways. And so really apprenticeship is kind of the ultimate work-based learning experience, right? So just as a reminder, we want to build work-based learning experiences, and this continuum here is something we build in all of our programs. But these apprenticeship opportunities is that ultimate kind of career training, the ultimate opportunity for our students to be out working in industry, because apprenticeships are a paid on-the-job training. Students are receiving paid on-the-job training during this apprenticeship opportunity where they're working in these highly skilled industries. And so it's a tremendous opportunity anytime that we can create in those programs, in those areas, in those trades where apprenticeships are the avenue to get into employment. We certainly want to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to connect our programs to these apprenticeship opportunities. And so there are different types. And so as we'll talk about kind of the three major types of apprenticeships and then where we think our best bets are. So apprenticeship, a non-registered apprenticeship, just an apprenticeship, can be created by really any organization or company. A company could decide that, hey, we have a hiring need that we have, and we want to work to create an apprenticeship pathway to go work for, let's use APS. APS can create an apprenticeship through their organization, a big company like that, where it's just an APS apprenticeship. They can define what that training looks like, what that pathway is going to look like, and then work with an educational institution to provide the learning or the classroom type learning for that apprenticeship pathway. Those are great opportunities for an organization that's large enough and can create those opportunities. And that could be open to 16 years and above, because again, it wouldn't be registered with a state organization or a federal organization. And so there would be a little bit less of those requirements. So it'd be determined by that organization that forms that apprenticeship. So it's the advantages, it's specific to the needs of that sector, that particular industry. But that training would not be necessarily documented and transferable, meaning that, if you did this apprenticeship through APS in the example I gave, and then you go move to another company, that may or may not be recognized by somebody else. So it's really not transferable. So the registered apprenticeships, the registered youth apprenticeship is the next opportunity. We talked about the example that CJ referenced with the CTEDs. They're looking at opportunities to maybe do a youth registered apprenticeship where they could come together and be a sponsoring organization where then they would register a youth apprenticeship in a trade pathway. The difference is those are overseen by the Office of Apprenticeship and the Department of Labor at the state level. And so those have to be, there's requirements and those are approved, but then that becomes documented training experience and that can be transferable to different organizations or even to other states, depending on where that could be recognized. But they would be available for age 16 and up. And then registered apprenticeships, some of the traditional registered apprenticeships out there are that 18 plus. And you can see some of the hour requirements that they have there for both classroom learning and on-the-job training. Very similarly, these are transferable. Those registered apprenticeship are transferable throughout the state. Different companies can attach and hire people from the same registered apprenticeship at a state level. And again, many of those are transferable across states to different in the same field sector. So those are opportunities to be recognized. We at West-MEC, so we're a lot of the work that we're doing to kind of, as CJ mentioned, where there's opportunities where we could be part of an already existing apprenticeship pathway, whether that's a youth apprenticeship or a registered apprenticeship, and articulate our program as credit into those apprenticeship pathways. We feel like that's a successful avenue for us to go down. Some examples of where we've done that is and currently working on that is in our electrical trades program. So this is an example of where we're currently working with the Arizona Builders Alliance, who has a registered electrical apprenticeship, and working with them to be able to articulate. We use the same curriculum that they use in their apprenticeship program in our electrical trades program on both of our campuses. And so we're working with them to be able to give students credit essentially for all of the classroom learning that they're doing while they're with us, so that they have a head start and get credit for 6 months to a year of time, and then step into an apprenticeship right when they finish our program and already have that head start in time. And so it's already an existing apprenticeship. We're just going to articulate so our students get a head start in that and get credit for what they've done with us. And so that's something we're continuing to explore in a lot of our trades pathways. We believe there's some potential to do that in some of the other construction, HVAC type of areas to do some of that articulation. Some other successes we've had, a big success that we've had in apprenticeships, and we're continuing to even just earlier today, we had a meeting with TSMC to further explore this, but we have been able to, TSMC has worked with the city of Phoenix and very closely with West-MEC to create an apprenticeship pathway. The city of Phoenix is going to sponsor that registered apprenticeship in the area to prepare students for semiconductor manufacturing, an industrial maintenance mechanic, and to go into that sector. The plan is very exciting. That this is just one pathway that they've started with, and the idea is to create the same apprenticeship pathway in other job categories like manufacturing technicians. The equipment technicians are the two that we talked about earlier today, that they really want to target next and create these streamlined apprenticeship pathways, working with City of Phoenix and TSMC. So exciting work happening with TSMC and apprenticeships.
And I might add, this is the only one in the United States that exists for semiconductor. We're the only one.
Well, and TSMC continues to be a great partner. We met with them today earlier to talk about continued articulation and partnership. And then they were meeting with our students at the Northeast campus. And then they're going to be going to all campuses to meet with our current students because they want to hire students right now. Because they know, even though we're going to create some more streamlined pathways in the future, but they recognize that our students in our current programs, even at auto technology and our electrical trades program that I referenced, have a lot of the skills and dispositions they're looking for. And so they want to get out in front and talk about TSMC and hire them. They actually had 2 of our former students at the meeting today that are now working for TSMC in manufacturing. Both of them were manufacturing technicians. One came from our water systems program at our Southwest campus, and one was an auto technician student from our Northwest campus. And so the pathway is already there. They're already hiring our students, but we're going to open this to have in the future. We'll have this direct pathway for our students through apprenticeship opportunities at TSMC. That also is going to grow to other advanced manufacturers in the semiconductor industry. Amcor, for example, once we create these pathways, others like Amcor and others will be able to latch on to those apprenticeship pathways to open even more doors in advanced manufacturing.
Or Nestle as well.
Yeah, Nestle's another one that is very interested in articulating.
We're gonna be fighting over our kids.
It's true.
They already are.
It's true.
I have a question, this may sound stupid, but is this available to our students in our satellite schools?
Yes, so these apprenticeships, so we're working with some good examples, especially on the semiconductor side. We've been working with Peoria School District and Deer Valley District specifically, who are in some of their engineering programs are really trying to meet this same need of advanced manufacturing. And so as we work together with them, as we find these opportunities, we work together with them because they may have an engineering program where they're able to add in, they're gonna have their engineering standards they're gonna cover, but they'll be able to add in a lot of these skills that TSMC is looking for, depending on what that job is. For example, the manufacturing technician position is one that I think many of our satellite engineering programs, even some of the IT programs, because they're really looking for that automation side. So they're really literally working on a computer screen, automating everything that's happening in the fab. And so that could apply to a lot of different programs with those skill sets.
Chairman Straka, and Board Member Bosom, to your point, I think it's, so when the question is asked, is West-MEC doing anything with apprenticeships? The answer is a resounding yes. It's hard because sometimes people look and say, is West-MEC a sponsor of a registered apprenticeship? And the answer is no. So there's a lot of different definitions up there, and I think it's important. I don't believe would want to limit ourselves to only being a sponsor of a registered apprenticeship. Our approach, our multifaceted approach, is reflective of the pathways that our students take. Some will want to go on to a 4-year full registered apprenticeship. Some will want to be able to get that credit through their West-MEC program toward the first year of a registered apprenticeship. Others will not want to pursue the apprenticeship route. They'll want to go on to post-secondary and earn dual credit. Others will want to go right to work, and all of those make sense for those individual students. So I think this keeps us nimble, but we are extremely active and engaged in the apprenticeship conversation.
Never mind.
I want to go back to something you said. The governor said we need to double apprenticeships. How many apprenticeships are there now? And what percentage does West-MEC represent of those? And then what study did she find that we need to double? I mean, is that the market demand, or should it be triple? Or is this just, she said double just because it was politically sounded good?
Just giving a speech.
Well, exactly. What is there something behind it, or is it just a wish?
So I can't speak for the governor, but
I'm not asking.
I would say that this really was prompted by some of the at minimum perception around the trades availability at TSMC, the build out of that site, and the narrative that we were having to import workers, we didn't have it local, and there was a lot of conflating that with the actual manufacturing workforce that are two separate conversations. But I would say that I don't know that any hard data that would have justified doubling. I think it's, a worthy target or benchmark. And I think in Arizona, we have about 250 registered apprenticeships, which in my opinion is low. I think as you look across the country, there's far more availability, and I think we should look beyond the trades. I think apprenticeship makes sense. It's a viable model for healthcare, for IT, for other sectors as well.
So
I was gonna say, so my second part, and then I'll turn over to
yeah,
you.
so I can tell you that part of the conversation that spurred that initiative, the Build It AZ initiative, was that once they got the complaints from the different construction projects to include semiconductor facility projects, that they discovered that we were totally falling behind in apprenticeship programs comparable to the other states. So we're like number 40, we were somewhere in the 40s in the national apprenticeship participation for the country. And so that validated the conversation about increasing, but they couldn't triple, quadruple these numbers immediately, so they gave us 6 years to double it.
So I guess what I would say is, what I'd love to see is two things, is how do we know we're being successful? So if we say there's X amount of our students going to these apprenticeships, our goal is to double that. So do we know how many of our students are going into the apprenticeships today? And if not, we should find out, because if we need to double that number, and then on the same thing with the youth, I would say, come up with an educated guess. For every 2 students that do a youth, 1 will go to an apprenticeship. So if we are going from 300 to 600, that means we need 1,200 in the youth apprenticeship. Well, then if we get 2,000, we know we've hit out of the ballpark. But what I'd like to see is some kind of ration,
so
to say we're being successful.
West-MEC's not exclusive.
Right.
Apprenticeship model. So the West-MEC is one of the many partners, but we've included the whole state in that conversation.
So when you say the whole state, West-MEC represents, so if it's 1,000 students, West-MEC represents what percentage? And that's what we should work on, but because I don't want to see the staff work on something, and how do we know they were successful? Well, we registered 50 more kids. Is that good or not? Is 200 kids good or not? And so we should have some, it's great to do something, but it's also, we should know what the bar is, and is really doubling reasonable, or should it be triple?
So the apprenticeship is actually the end of apprenticeship, usually ends up with the job. It's embedded inside of the job. So when you're done with the apprenticeship, naturally, by the very course of its definition, you have a job in that field of which you got the apprenticeship from. So that medium point doesn't exist. It's a direct line to a pipeline of an employer.
And varying years of which they would complete. Some will be 3, some could be, some will be 4, because it's the hour requirement.
We are able to track, so in our placement surveys of students, we are able to track that apprenticeship as an avenue that they go down, so we can determine how many are going into those apprenticeship pathways and maybe start to narrow down into our data where, you know, which apprenticeship are they connecting to, and where we could really start to hone in on some of that data. But I don't know that it's just, our goal would just be to increase those numbers, because we always, again, like CJ said, that might be a great choice for certain students, but if a student chooses to go into a post-secondary community college or university, because that's the pathway they want to go down, we want to create all those different avenues. But as we create more seamless pathways, we should see those numbers increase that choose that.
Because I know even on one of the studies we do, if you go on a Mormon mission, that counts as success because of the way we measure exit strategies.
Placement, yep.
It's placement.
Are some of these apprenticeships, are they part-time where a student can go to college and do the apprenticeship at the same time? Or are these all full-time?
It depends. I hate to keep saying that, but yeah, it depends on the.
Lawyers up here.
Some employers are able to work where a student could work part-time while they're going to school, whatever that training looks like. Many of the traditional apprenticeship pathways, they are working a 40-hour week, and then they attend classes at night and in the evenings. And so it really varies by the different type of apprenticeship and who the sponsoring organization is.
And some of those apprenticeships have articulated dual enrollment at a community college or a post-secondary institution.
It's hours based.
Hours based.
Yeah, so it's how many hours you have in the program. So your hours we cut up, it all depended on the program.
But there's so many different variables that would determine whether.
Yeah, sounds exciting, but it's a
Yeah.
lot of
Apprenticeship
pieces.
will challenge in one's life or the group they're working with. Because more people leave jobs because they don't like people they're working for, they're not liked, and a lack of skill sets.
Yeah.
So there's just too many unknowns there that's hard to account for, but the students that would finish, that would show us, that would at least show us that it was right student, in the right program.
Yep, exactly.
You know, for sure to be able to complete that. Some students take a different path. They may go step 1 and 2 and then take a complete right turn in Albuquerque. No pun intended. And that's a great pathway for some of our students. And believe me, our kids are very, very smart and they know, and they've looked at all the information, what's articulated. They know which pathway to take. They know the fastest way to get there and the least expensive way to get there.
And sometimes what we've found is that the employers can persuade the apprentice to just come on full-time. Don't worry about finishing the apprenticeship. We're gonna boost your pay right now. Just come on full-time, focus on, you know, we'll get you to supervisor in no time. Which is really not the intent. As an employer, when you are sponsoring or providing these experiences, it is you're committed to see that student through or that apprentice through to the end of that apprenticeship. So we've had good conversations with different organizations about that challenge.
They want this, they want the help
They do,
so bad,
yeah.
they're gonna do whatever.
And the burden is that since it's a DOL program, that there is data that's gotta be shared. So the employer has a burden to collect all that data, and somebody's like, look. Come on board, you're getting the program, you know, so, yeah. Nature of the beast.
Great,
Thank you.
very exciting, thank you.
Last chairman. Vice chair.
Yes, well, moving on to action discussion item 4.
Number 5. Average daily memberships.
Commission, Arizona Department of Education calculation. Average daily membership. Guess who's here?
Oh, I was way ahead on the agenda, sorry, I scrolled all the way down.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Spurgeon, colleagues, community members, thank you very much for allowing me to present tonight. You remember back in December, as we're going through the revised budget, a few comments about ADM and everything, and the board said, hey, how don't we learn a little bit more about our ADM and ask for a presentation. So this is that presentation. I will say, I always like to start with a why. Why are we doing this? Not just because the board asked for it. There's a few other reasons into it, and I think it's actually very honorable and a great idea. So I appreciate that the board's interest in average daily membership. First and foremost, it is what we build our budget on, so to have some understanding. At no point am I training you to be assist coordinator, to be assist technician, to go in and do the job of anything. I'm just trying to give an overview about just how it is and some of the complexities, but CTED's a little bit different, but most districts, CTED's probably even more. 80 to 85% of your funding is based on the number of students you have. So it is good to have a good understanding. I will also go into that when you're selling bonds, I go back to about 15, 16 years ago when I was selling some bonds and we had the board approve an official statement. And there's a good story that is very, I think, important of another reason why you should know the number of students. So as you're doing an official statement, you're declaring the district, here's what we are, what state. There was a municipality in Pennsylvania that was selling bonds, approving an official statement, and everybody in the room knew that the plant was shutting down and almost every job was losing, and nobody said a thing. And they did get sued afterwards. And so there is some duty for you to know in some capacity of what our number of students are. That also layers into, I have AFRA down here, but that's our annual comprehensive financial report that includes a management and discussion and analysis section that if our auditors see some fluctuations or some material difference of changes in ADM, it has to be disclosed. You should be already knowing this. This should not be a surprise to you that, oh my gosh, we lost half of our ADM. That is conversations to have. So just in large, it is good that you guys asked for it. I'm proud that you guys did, and I love that you did, and I love to talk. So it's kind of all worked out really good. So so just in general, everybody does know we get funded on the number of students. It can be very complicated, and part of it is why does it get complicated? Is it the number of students? Are we funded on ADM? How many students? When somebody says how many students you have, sometimes they could change one word in the question and you're getting different answers every time. How many students have? How many kids are we getting funded on? Two completely different numbers of students. How many are we impacting? coming and going. You could have some in and out, and you're getting fractional students that are being summed up for a number. So even a number of 6689 does not mean we had 6,689 students, because you have fractional ADM in there. So you had a lot more students in there that are generating that fractional to be summed up. So it can be very complicated. And as I look, so I pulled down ADE's CTED guidelines for ADM, average daily membership. And I did not know you guys had this many more rules. So there is layered complexity upon being a CTED and that. So that does also create a little bit more challenges. But by and large, just in general, there is limiting rules. So ADE uses the AZ system that we submit data to, your member districts submit data to, and then it does the calculations and kicks out ADM. ADE is looking at any revised statute that has anything to do with average daily membership and funding, and they're creating business rules within AZ so that it does the calculation, it does limiting so that they don't overpay. So they will pay up to the law, but they're not overfunding and any of that. So that is the whole purpose of that ADE limiting. We do submit our data. Well, it used to be in law that we're required to every 20 days. I don't know if that law is still on the books, but you're normally submitting weekly. Every 10 days, you're uploading data to make sure on a monthly basis, ADE is then running integrity checks. So they look at all your data, and if it has any error, it kicks it out. You do have to submit your data from day one all the way through every single time you're doing it. So if something changes in the back, so sometimes you can get better information and there's a change in it, you upload it, and it could change your ADM from an existing student that was generating, maybe it's fractional, now it just dropped. And so that also has the complexities, but it also has the time when in April you see your ADM drop by 100 kids, and you're like, we're past 100 days, it should have been locked in. It's because we're continuously submitting data, and you can go back and change it and or leave out a piece of information. It fails integrity at the state level, and it kicks out the student completely until you fix it. And then until you fix it, it comes back in. Every district and every charter, every educational organization is required to submit a calendar to the ADE for each individual site. So, and that calendar has to have your first day starting after July 1 and ending by June 30th. And then membership starts on the first day that a student actually shows up and is enrolled. Except for if they're a continuing student, you have a grace period of the first 10 days. So I know I just said that really quickly. That was a big deal. We had to work with ADE for a long time to understand that, because what we were trying to work with ADE is we are trying to plan and budget for X number of students. If they don't show up on day one, losing 1% of funding every day, or if they don't for the first 2 weeks, which would be 10% of the funding, we lost even though they just showed up. Even though they ended with us, they're still our student. ADE doesn't look at it technically that way because you have the summer, they end one grade, they'll start the next. They did understand if they ended with us, very high percentage chance they're gonna show up in the first 10 days unless they withdraw from us. If they withdraw, it goes back to the very first day and you don't get any funding. So it's not a grace period of an extra 10 days. It just gives us the first 10 days to actually get the students in and start getting funded. So a lot of districts probably see 10. We look at our 10, after the first 10 days are the most important, because even if they're not there, we're getting funded in those first 10 days. It's not till they don't show up that it doesn't happen. Membership does end on the 100th day. As you heard, we continue to submit data on it. Some districts around the state are on 200-day calendars. You have to do it as a district, not as an individual. You continue to get funding all the way through the first 200 days. Question?
So that's an interesting question, because I think I've asked this before. A lot of our programs go more than 180 days. Is there any advantage for us to go to a 200-day calendar to get additional funding, or is that not for CTEDs?
No, Vice Chair, or Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that is a great question, because I don't know on the CTED thing. So I did bring up my notepad here for, because I know I don't know everything.
Mr. Welsh coming to the podium.
The only thing I would add with permission is that with the new CTED rules, everything he said was completely true for traditional school districts, but with CTEDs, that 100-day can start differently. So it doesn't follow the school year anymore. So it will start with the students. So second semester, so for our block programs, we have many districts under block. So that student gets to count that 100 days from January, from the time they start second semester on. which has been very beneficial, and you'll see in some of his figures perhaps, it's why we've increased ADM this year because of recapturing those days.
But if they start in January and they only, so hypothetically, we have one student that starts January, goes for the semester, that's 90 days. We have a different student start in August and goes 90 days. We actually get 180% versus if it's the same student.
It's only for when it's a different student. We only get to count 100 days once.
Right, but
We don't get to duplicate it. And CTEDs aren't eligible for the 200-day calendar.
Thank you.
We're only eligible for this special new rule we created.
And it is, that is probably because you're on instructional hours.
Yes.
Is that it's funded, it's not directly tied to the calendar, it gives more flexibility.
That's completely true. So we can set hours by each course.
So what's significant about 100 days? Who picked it and why is it 100 days? Any idea?
Ms. Rodriguez?
It's a history.
I could give you an educated guess, is that the legislature way back, so this is still a funding system that was really created in the early 80s, and then modified in the 90s. Were the two biggest significance, and it was to make sure that way back in the 80s, you had everybody starting around the same time, ending around the same time, and then they'd have to do the calculations. And when I started in the early 90s, it was honestly paper, and then they moved to floppy disks and spreadsheets. And so I think it was really the timing to make sure that they were able to process and calculate. Now, having said that, I have been part of some lobbyist group that tried to change that, because with computers and technology and advances, why don't we just pick 4 days across the year? And if you're there, you get the full, and then we could get rid of maybe some of our staffing that we have a CIS person at every school, and every district that has more than one school has a CIS coordinator or somebody at the district office.
You have to have pizza 4 times a year.
Let me hit that pet peeve that you just threw out there right there of mine. And ADE, we did actually get a bill. There's somebody's son here spearheaded that, has spent hours and hours and months working on it. We got a bill passed and ADE got it reversed to say they cannot do that work. Their systems were archaic enough that they asked to reverse all that and to continue everything as is. So it does not make 100% sense, and we could make lots of recommendations to make it better. They have said, uncle, they can't do it. It's too much work in this. That was so let me just keep jumping, and I have no problem if we go off and don't even do the PowerPoint. That I'm okay with that. But that is one of my misconceptions I do like to talk about, because we're not funded on attendance. So having a pizza party on any one day has no impact on funding whatsoever. For the traditional schools. Now, we do have instructional and CTEDs, and there may be a little bit, but I still don't believe that's gonna hurt, because we are funded on membership. So if 5% of students don't show up, you didn't lose 5% of funding. From that standpoint. So that doesn't have that big of impact, but you still see stories of people talking about the 100-day. We still see ice cream socials on the 100-day, pizza parties on the 100-day. But that's not really changing. We're funded on membership.
So on this schedule with 100 days, even 200 days, does that line up with our credential requirement? So I know our exception is that we actually have an industry credential that we guarantee so many hours of that training that has to go into building out that credential. So does that have any impact at all with these days requirements that we're talking about right now?
I would have to defer to some of your experts. I don't believe so, but the hours requirements for school districts are enough that it's
a simple no.
It's a simple no. Yeah, we exceed what the state requires so that we can make sure students meet the qualifications for industry.
And you were required to complete 180 hours to sit for certification, and all we offered was 180 hours. Many of our kids, if they missed a day of school, wouldn't qualify to sit for it. That's why offering the extra allows that little bit of lead time, a little bit of leeway.
So just go, okay, correct.
I have a question. So this is something I never really thought about before, but since the ADM is fractioned, how many students, I always equated ADM to students, and that's not true. So how many students do we really have?
So that is a great question. We'll back into that answer. I'll do some calculations on my phone and give you an estimate on that. Our number changes, every single time I pull it down and there's updated data, it changes every single time. So the best way, and I talked to Noemi, earlier tonight, just about getting some kind of standardized report where at a point in time, we have some hard data and that kind of thing. So, so much of her work has been just cleaning up integrity and getting everything up to date as much as possible throughout this whole for the first semester. We'll hit back with her and we'll start looking on getting some better reports and everything like that. But from a membership generating ADM standpoint, you're getting only 0.25 from every one of those students. So you could multiply that by 4. That's not an 100% accurate estimate, but that is a ballpark to get there. So you're probably, and the number just went up, you're probably in the 38,000, very high number, maybe 35, 36. But you can see, so here's some of the part of what led this conversation as I was doing the presentation to ASBA, and just trying to highlight some of the complexities that it's not that easy. And when you're working with a demographer, you're projecting, you're thinking people that are interested in classes, and you'll put down and say, hey, we need to plan for 4 students to be coming here so that we could have that opportunity for 4 students. But you can see as they're coming in at different times, and these could be all new students because they're being enrolled and show up. So that first 10 days doesn't matter that I've started with. You can see those 4 students are only generating 2.69 ADM. So it looks like you're only getting funded on less than 3 students, but even though you have seats, resources, and are providing education for 4 students for the majority of the year, but the funding will not be there for the majority. If 2 of those students were taking a CTED class at a satellite at one of your member districts, where you think you would be getting a 0.5 ADM for them, you would only be getting the 0.295 for them. So it does, looking at it only the first 100 days does have some negative connotation. There is some positive in the sense that it doesn't go beyond 100 days in the sense that if you're a declining district, you stop the decline a little bit sooner. If you're in growing district, you start the growth you stop it a little bit sooner. So could be a positive, negative, depending on where you are on that trend line going up or down. In CTEDs, you have different rules for satellite courses, centralized campuses, least centralized campuses, tuition payers, and community college programs. So this is more of, I did not know what I stepped into when I said, let's just go into a little bit of ADM because I know traditional school ADM. And then I know I talked to CJ once saying, oh my gosh, I need somebody to help me because you guys have so many unique different rules depending on where they are and how they are that creates a lot of stress. And I know I was a little worried about ESAs, making sure you're getting tuition payers. And we said, no, we already have a tuition program set up for them. So that's okay in that sense because you're not collecting ADM.
So can you go back to that? What's the difference between a centralized campus and a least centralized campus? And how does that affect ADM?
They had different rules, and I did not read through all the different rules, but the rules were calculated different for your ADM if it's a least. And I assume there's some component, I don't know if you guys have already experienced this, that they didn't want some manipulation of ADM, leasing it from a school district or something to that effect to capitalize and say it's a centralized campus. And so that I just making that assumption there's that limiting factor.
This actually started with West-MEC. It's when we leased the Freightliner building for the medium heavy diesel program many years ago. They wrote this in that before that it always had to be owned or operated, but if we leased the space and there was an actual lease agreement in place, then we could collect ADM off of it.
So and it treats it more like a centralized campus than a satellite.
Correct. So we can get the
I'm just thinking
0.75.
This already would put us in that same situation.
That's absolutely right. That's why we can do
But
that.
that's why I asked the question.
Because it's not your property and AD is like, how do we determine this and something? So they have to create something unique on it. So regardless of any state eligibility and all those different, all students that are enrolled in CTE classes must be reported to ADE. So if they're not getting funded, whether they're ESA or something, you're putting in a tuition payer code 2. If you're getting funded, it's a tuition payer 1, and then it's coming from that CTDS number so that they know who and how to calculate. They also have to be a resident and can only be in grades 11, 10, 11, and 12. Qualified ninth grade students, you guys are probably more aware than I am of your ninth grade funding. That they can generate additional funding. Those students are prohibited from generating more than 4 years. So if they're in, you can get the extra, but they can't do more extra and get more years of funding. And in the manual, it does say clearly to put code these as a tuition payer code 15. As I was talking upstairs, they said that AD is acknowledged that's wrong. They actually go to tuition payer code 9. So just not that you guys will ever go into your SIS system and check out students. I hope you never go into your SIS students to, let me rephrase that. You guys should never go in and look at different data and codes in that sense. But the good news is she knows that it was wrong and she is working to get it right, submitting the right codes in there when we submit all of our data. You get 3, for every 3 community college credits, you're generating a 0.25 ADM. Each community college has to have their own CTDS number that's submitted. And then ADM is really just calculated by divided the number of instructional hours of 600 that instructional hours you're providing by 600 to get the fractional ADM of 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, or up to 1.0 is what it allows for. But, and then here's the rules. This is where I was like, oh my gosh, you have to have a regionally identified high needs program as identified by the Office of Economic Opportunity. More complex than what school districts have to live in your world in that sense, but all of these criteria. And if it gets approved and if it's after the 40th day, after the 11th grade, additional funding is provided. And I did go on ADE's website and see that it looks like for this year, we'll be getting additional 3.6 million. So that was not included in the December revision.
The reason you're making this presentation is to make it very clear for us.
So let me reset your expectations. It's just to create awareness. More knowledge is never bad, but I'm not creating clarity because it is extremely confusing. And that is why we buy software. If this was super easy, we just put it on a spreadsheet and upload it.
So then all these rules came about over the last 30 or 40 years. No, don't do that. I'm just kidding. When you're working with ADE and they change them all the time. But when he started out, he indicated how important ADM is. It's everything. Now, for us to become experts would be foolhardy. We don't want to do that. But I do, before we finish this, want to know what the title of the person in West-MEC that does this. Somebody's in charge of this. I have no idea who it is.
It's Naomi. I do not know her title. SIS coordinator. SIS coordinator, which is.
How long has Naomi been with us?
6 years.
She's been with us 6 years. And do all the schools feed the information into her? I just want to bring that up because fellow board members, her role is incredibly important. He talked about coding a few minutes ago. This person that is really going to determine how much money we get. And we can't do anything without the bucks. And yet, even if we get them, I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure Mr. Hicks would too, the legislature may change them. I mean, and they change them all the time. The way this system came up is not only archaic, in my opinion, one board member, but it's ridiculous and could be changed, could be simpler, and could be much more fair than it is. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I agree. We've tried many times to change it. Sometimes school districts are our own worst enemies. And when most of us say change it to more simpler, somebody finds a reason to say we really like that, don't change it. And we talk, we do everything, we waste people's time, and in the end, nothing changes. So I will say, I did have a conversation with Naomi. Part of it was, I noticed, and I'll get to some data later, as Ms. Rodriguez pointed out, there's a new report on AD's website of BSA 21, which is for CTEDs, that shows all the because before I was having a lot of trouble. I don't have an AZEDS login, so just as being a community member, breaking down their ADM from all the member districts, where it's coming from versus our core, our centralized campus. There is a report out there. I was able to easily see something. which was very nice, and it's very important to have all that understanding. But it changes, it is correct, I agree 100%, it's very important, correct? I would also say, every time somebody changes downtown, their interpretation changes. And
That happens often.
that happens often, unfortunately, and throughout the year, and so part of. And I'm not gonna go into a lot of logistical conversations about that's gonna be difficult for some of the members of how it's being submitted up from them or to West-MEC and then up. I will tell you, they are getting data from all the member districts. They have worked with IT. They have created some queries to bundle, sort, and clean up when they know it's an error and it should be fixed. They then change the data before it goes up. So it is running through us and it is being cleaned up in that sense. And so she working with IT, everybody's doing a good job of getting on the same page to clean up as we see errors to do these mass uploads.
And there's one thing with our central data, we got that, and I assume that, but for the satellites, we're depending upon each one of them.
Yes.
And the job is enormous. And I just I don't want to scare the board, but I'm telling you, it's huge that we have the right people in the right places with the right information. And you all know, I probably know Mr. Hicks since he was that big, but thanks to him and Mr. Weeks, and now we're gonna depend on Marcy, it's huge. Because we don't have the bucks. It stops.
No, that's all right. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so here, I just went a couple slides forward and you can see there are issues. And you can see this is in October, the ADM's looking like it's around 3,000, that's central and satellites. Then it jumps to 68, then it drops to 66, then it drops to 59. And a report I just looked at today has it almost nearly 8,700. And so you have wide fluctuations, and I will say, and I'm sure Marcy will be doing the same thing. You are running these reports monthly. You are checking it against what changed from the last month. And then you are talking to your SIS coordinator to say, hey, did we expect that? Do we know that? Oh, and I'll tell you, I've had conversations over the last 2-3 months with Noemi, and when I see something, she goes, yes, I'm working on all the integrity. I know all that failed. So as I'm seeing something change, she already knows there's an error. And then they're working on it. So it is something that's constantly all the way through the year. And then we think we know it's everything done in June. And then in July, at some point, they run a statewide integrity and redo the whole thing and calculate. And that always adjusts at some point, your ADM down. Because the other rule is that we will be submitting data. Maybe a student goes to a class outside an entity we know of that will generate more ADM than what is legally allowed to. And then what happens is everybody takes a proportional reduction. So if you think that they're taking one at their traditional school, they're taking one with a satellite, and then maybe they take one online. And then they say you generated too much ADM by about 5%, everybody takes a 5% reduction. Because they don't know exactly who kicked it over, they assume everybody has an equal opportunity to that ADM. And so that normally is what happens in July is you see that ADM adjusted at the final amount, which is after we revise our budget in May, that we have to make estimates. If it goes down, which normally does, we catch it up on the next year and have to revise our budget down. But just think about those wide swings. And I think if you look at September, I didn't put that on there, but that was at 400. We had new software, we had but at least now with the new report, we know what member district is down if it changes. We know what our centralized campus is now. And we have people, soon to be Marcy, but others looking at it. And we have our SIS coordinator up there that is looking at this at a regular basis to make sure that we're getting funded, fully funded on everything there.
And what happens if the state runs out of money?
Well, legally, they're still required to pay the money, but
they'll pay it, but it'll be later.
Which they do right now.
Which
Which they do right now on a rollover. They've deferred $800 million because they ran out of money back in 2010, and so they deferred. So they still have not caught up the payments from 13 years ago. But we have the legal ability to spend up to our budget capacity. So whether they pay us the money or not, as long as we have the budget capacity, we could generate registered warrants and have some interest expense into it, which would then cost the district money and lose some funding.
And the interest expense you just put back on the taxpayer.
2 years later you can, and then that just increases the taxpayers.
What could go wrong?
It's a foolproof system.
So can we pass it back to the taxpayer? We're already at a nickel tax and we're not allowed to go any higher.
We can't set our tax rate, we're just five.
Or it's a 5 flat cent. We can't change it.
That's because of the legislature.
By statute, we can't change that.
That is for your RCL and DAA. If you register warrants, interesting.
We would have to
probably ask in your lobby to look for being treated the same, that if the state's not funding you and you register warrants and it's a cost, that you're able to get that cost reimbursed by your local taxpayers. It's not. It's an inequity that others have that same mechanism. Or the state could just pay us in the year that we're supposed to get the money. Which I've been saying for, hopefully nobody's recording this.
It's out on YouTube.
I will just say, so I think you've already hit the points that I wanted to hit, which is it is important that we have people at every site, every member district site, every member district office and your own district office that are all working to work through all the ADM submissions, data and uploads to AZES to make sure that we're getting funded correctly. When there looks like there's an error, we're working through those errors, we're talking. A lot of times we see it all ourselves, it's failing integrity, it all, you know, I remember seeing it one night, still there working, 12, 14-hour days, trying to go through all the integrity as quickly as possible so that we get our next payment is reflected with as much ADM. So they are very important people that are doing this work that are getting it. Your job also is not just what are we being funded on, what did we build a budget on to make sure they're somewhat aligned. Because we're current year funded for M&O, you have an estimate where before we had prior year funding, you knew exactly what your floor was. Here, there's no floor, so it goes up and down. So there is a understanding as I know we've been talking budget for months on what we're looking at, what next year looks at. So we'll continue to talk that before it comes to the board, but it is important. We have M&O is current year funded. Our district additional assistance number is based on the prior year. Instructional improvements fund and the classroom site fund are previous year funding, and only the central campus creates that ADM. So you do not get through member district ADM to contribute to those two funds. And so that's only the centralized campus on it. So I think we got through the whole thing, but I feel like you're excited as I am. Appreciating membership. I feel like you're all asking good questions. Everybody's engaged to understand how important it is. And that we have lots of people helping support. So I appreciate you guys' interest in this topic.
And then on top of it all, the auditor walks in the door. He wants to see all the different calculations, which drives the business department absolutely crazy. There, I'm going here at the end of, so there needs to be a better way. Now, it's tough to do because each legislature thinks they have the answer. There are, how many Frank Strakas in the legislature?
90.
It's very difficult, districts and the public could really benefit if they could put their heads together and
just burn type 15 and start all over again.
Yeah, it needs to be really looked at and started over
They're
again.
supposedly doing it. Ken Bennett has done some revisions, but I don't think it amounted to hell of gains.
So I can shed some light on that. In a previous life, I was involved in a company that we had a 40-year-old system with code dating back to 1976. And we finally decided to pull the trigger and say, let's create a new system. The estimate, $180 million in 3 years to implement. They did spend that money. 3 years later, they have not even launched a test site yet. It is now, the cost is escalating because there was 4 million lines of code. The cost to go through the Department of Education system and determine what are the business rules, what are the laws, and how is it calculated? It's cost prohibitive. And that's where, when they say we can't do that, that's why they cannot change systems very easily.
Well, there's so many people involved, that think they have the right answer. but boy, it would sure benefit here. And we could go to other states. There are a better example. I've had the good fortune or bad of working in 3 different states. The most difficult between Ohio and Washington State here is Arizona, by far, not by a little bit, by a lot. But that's great job security for Mr. Hicks, Mr. Winks, and Ms. Rodriguez.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I agree with a lot of your comments. I have tried to say, just have Title Phoenix 15 expire by 2030, and let's see what comes back in, and we can rebuild it. So nothing is done. That doesn't help. Mr. Bennett is running the Title 15 cleanup. It will help. It's not helping any of this stuff. So it's not focused on ADM calculations or cleanup. And part of what we're frustrated as business officials are we'll get an audit finding on student attendance because form wasn't signed within 5 days.
Yep.
That's a finding. That has no bearing on funding. These are rules that we've been around for 30-some years from something in a system that things are better and different or not signed by the right administrator. You get a finding. And so, or attendance findings, you miscalculated and have somebody out at the wrong time. They look at the log and when they leave and our auditors will see, oh, that should only been calculated this hours per the day. We miscalculated. That's a finding. Has no bearing on funding. And so we've tried to pull out anything that doesn't have any bearing on funding, and it has been unsuccessful. But we continue to do our job. We know, we train our staff even when ADE misinterprets or reinterprets. That was not, that was an accidental slip. When they reinterpret things, we then go back and we make sure that we're doing it the right way and then training everybody on that.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Riley, it might be helpful with the slides that he put up there this evening, if we have an example of looking at the budget, maybe we'll put a slide up here that show you like, maybe a little bit of stuff might help you make more sense of. It takes you a while to work with it, if you don't do it every day. It's just never really makes sense. But if you see an example of what we're talking through and saw an example, it may help.
All right, business partnership update. Mr. Williams.
Good evening, Chairman Strock, members of the board, Superintendent Spurgeon. As always, thank you for the opportunity to highlight some of our efforts in business development and some updates with legislative affairs. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through my whole list, but I'll select some of the top points and include the rest in the weekly board letter. It's been said that opportunity is often missed because it wears overalls and looks like hard work. I can say, I don't know about the overalls, but I could say that West-MEC has not missed an opportunity, and we have been fully engaged in the hard work of creating partnerships and opportunities for our students. Some of those examples are related to the chambers that we're very much engaged with. West-MEC had the opportunity earlier this week. Jared and I were able to present to the Buckeye Valley Chamber. They are extremely proud of their Southwest campus out in Buckeye. And I truly believe that Buckeye at one point will be the center of the universe with all the growth that's happening out there. And as I drove out to the chamber meeting to give the presentation west on the 10, I just saw just the traffic going east in the morning. And it was a visual for me and a reminder for me how important it is that we do create these opportunities and we grow business and industry in the West Valley so people don't have to commute east and can stay local. Another one was earlier today with TSMC, as Jarrett mentioned. We had the chance to meet with some of their leadership, one of their vice presidents, as well as some of their supervisors and managers and technicians to really engage in this workforce strategy and how we're going to come together and connect our students with those opportunities, because that becomes the model. And as goes that relationship, so goes our work with the Amcors, Nestle's, Core Powers, and more to come. I heard and Brian Wright with the economic development team in Buckeye teased yesterday about a big announcement coming in the advanced manufacturing space out in Buckeye. He absolutely refused to tell me who it was, but he said we'll be very excited about it. So we were excited today because TSMC had the chance to also meet with some of our students And those testimonials having current texts that were former West-MEC students tell their story about how they got to TSMC, what a day at TSMC looks like, what their plans are for the future. It's such a powerful experience for students to be engaged in. Amcor official approval in the city of Peoria. So that is that site plan is for sure. So we congratulate them, as well as the Coreplex, Core Power and Buckeye, their site plan got final approval. So those are absolutely official, and we look forward to partnering with both of them. It was asked at the end of the last board meeting, I believe, just an update on Innovation 27, and this, I believe, does fall under our business development efforts. We've been working closely as a collaborating partner with the city of Phoenix, ASU, and the Maricopa Community College District to renovate the old Kmart off I-17 in Northern. And this is a long time coming. This all started pre-pandemic, and then that kind of stalled things out. It was resurrected, and Chris Mackey, Economic Development Director for City of Phoenix, is extremely passionate about this project. They're funding the renovation and have engaged ASU, Maricopa Community Colleges, and West-MEC to provide the training at this location. They have selected the architect, they have selected the general contractor, and originally, the ambitious plan was to start offering training at that site fall of 24. We all kind of giggled when that was first said, and it has proven to be an overly ambitious timeline. I do think that there could be a phase one ready by spring of 25, but likely fall of 25. And we look forward to having a presence at that site. And it's a win-win. It's within our footprint, it's within the West-MEC boundaries. It's in a region of our district that we don't really have a presence, because it's further south from where our Northeast campus is up north on the 17. And it sits in the back of Glendale Union High School District, which is a great partner district of ours. Phoenix is paying for it. If we can engage with a private partner with industry, they can bring in the equipment, and that is where the AMS group comes in, that refrigeration technician group. They are a subsidiary of Dover Food, which is, I think they have about 80% of the market share of all commercial refrigeration, grocery stores, convenience stores. They manufacture the refrigeration units, they install, and they provide the warranty service for those. So they need techs to help manufacture, help install, and warranty and maintain those commercial refrigeration units. They say it is really become a dire situation where they have no qualified workers, because there really isn't a training program that exists specifically for refrigeration technician. So we tapped into this effort with City of Phoenix at Innovation 27 to pull in the AMS group to provide an adult training program at that site for refrigeration technician. They'll bring in the lab equipment. We will engage our CNI team to help develop the curriculum and the pathways and the stackable credentials. And Julie Rodriguez, thank you to her, has been working closely with Cheryl at the AMS group to be ready whenever the site is ready to go. So happy to answer any questions specific to Innovation 27, but that is moving along. The next step.
Mostly adult.
It will be mostly adult. It's not to say that a future phase couldn't offer a high school program, but right now the plan is for adult. So the original collaborating group has met with the architect for that site to talk about shareable space, common areas, what that might look like. City of Phoenix has also purchased the Super 8 hotel that's on the same site for workforce housing. And then the Crystal Palace event hall that's on the site as well to, I think the plan is to turn that into more of a community kitchen, maybe some hospitality, culinary offerings in that space. And then the old Kmart building, which is a large, I think 100,000 square foot building, where West-MEC will have a piece of that. And then the next step with the architect is to meet individually with the collaborators. So they'll meet with West-MEC and the AMS group. We'll talk about what training labs we need, what classroom space we need, what other work areas we might need. With that, on the legislative front, as the weather kind of turns to spring, we begin to think maybe we're nearing the midpoint of the legislative session, but there is no way to know. Today's day 59 of the current legislative session, and a total, just over 1,750 bills were introduced this session. Roughly 1,000 of those are not active any longer, effectively dead as they refer to, leaving about 750 to 800 bills still in play that, and I think 700 have crossed the courtyard from the chamber of origin to the opposite chamber. And that being said, nothing's ever really done until sine die, because these things can sneak back up via amendments, budget negotiations, strikers, all of those means that can be used to bring back a bill that maybe didn't get heard in committee or didn't make it out of committee. March 22nd, coming up the end of this month, is the last day for the House bills to be heard in Senate committees and vice versa. So at that point, we'll know really which are still active and which are in play to be heard on the floor. I want to talk about a few bills that we've been tracking, and you'll have to forgive me, I didn't pay attention to what I printed, but the font is like 0. So this will be interesting to see if I can read my notes on these, but one that is interesting that crossed the courtyard and is Senate Bill 1097, and this is to change local school board elections to partisan school board elections, and that is tracking through the House at this time. Senate Bill 1686, I just want to, I think it's worth mentioning, this was the CTE bill that would allow districts and charters to offer their own CTE programs, be funded. Thanks. I don't know if that helps or hurts me here. Makes me dizzy a little bit. So that one, and would be funded the same as CTED. So we were in opposition to that. I appreciate Board Member Bosom really helping make the case and being informed on that topic, as well as other stakeholders that understood that that bill would have not only duplicated an existing system, but probably would have compromised a very proven statewide CTE system, and would have cost much more money and would have lacked the accountability that CTEDs currently have. So that was pulled through conversation that we had with the bill sponsor and the lobbyist that was engaged with that. I would say that the topic has not gone away. So we will come back to that and work with that group, and stay tuned. More likely to unfold over the late spring and summer on that topic. But we want to fully engage all students in all educational settings in the CTED system. We believe that CTE is important, and we want to offer it to all students wherever you're coming from, charters, homeschool, online schools, private schools, district schools. We think it's important for everybody. Another one is we talked about last month was House Bill 2639, the dental assisting bill that would allow dental assistants to perform radiography without passing the exam. That did pass, and it was a party line vote. I do think it's likely that that will be vetoed by the governor. So we'll see how that plays out, but that one did pass on a party line vote. Senate Bill 1456, that's the CTED 4th year funding cleanup bill that would convert the current in-demand list, regional in-demand list, to a statewide in-demand list. It would also change the persistence requirement that Ken was talking about, 40th day of the junior year on a full moon every other year. It would change that to persisting to grade 10 in an approved in-demand program. I believe those are the two big changes. It's important to understand this is not an increased cost per student. This is simply removing a barrier for students to access CTE. and have funding to be involved in those programs. So this did pass out of the Senate. JLBC, as was the case last year, has is preparing a fiscal note. What will the cost of this bill be? And last year, if you'll remember, it was, I think, way inflated at over $40 million. We thought at most it would be half of that, and that was with last year's language. We've compromised and made new language. So I and Tina Norton out of Pima JTED are meeting with JLBC this Friday to make sure that they've got solid data out of ADE and that their fiscal note is accurate, which I think will be much more palatable to the legislature. Senate Bill 1466, that's the graduation bill that would require by 27, the cohort of 27, I believe, graduating class of 27 to pass a high stakes statewide test like ACT and or complete an approved CTE program, earning the industry credential and passing the technical skills assessment. This is where I need my notes. So this got interesting. The Senator Bennett, who's the bill sponsor, exercised his strategy. He voted no. So it failed 1414. And he voted no so that he could bring it back to another floor vote. There was some politics behind the scenes that resulted in that vote. He felt he could swing the one vote the other way to get it passed out of the Senate. I think it will have equal challenges on the House side. The mirror bill for this grad bill didn't get heard in the House Education Committee. So I think even should this move over to the House, it will face some challenges. But you know, we are proponents of the career technical education aspect. It really elevates and honors the rigor and the opportunity that comes from completing a CTE program and earning a credential or demonstrating competency by the technical skills assessment. So we are certainly in favor of that, and we'll continue to support that as it tracks and crosses the courtyard. Board Member Wiley, you mentioned Title 15 simplification bill. Dr. Spurgeon and I had the opportunity to be on a call yesterday with Senator Bennett where he expressed his optimism around Senate Bill 1654. He feels that, you know, you kind of shoot for the stars and hope for 15 or so changes. And if you get half of them, that's still progress. And we can remove some of the inefficiencies and burdensome elements of Title 15. So he remains optimistic that that will cross over. And I want to say, because I don't know if it got heard today. So it went through the committee of the whole today. Amendment was adopted on the floor that made some changes, put some things back in it, and it awaits vote in the Senate probably tomorrow. So that's Title 15 simplification bill. Last but not least, I just want to touch on Prop 123 because this is a hot topic. I felt it when I said Prop 123. So Prop 123, it is a referendum passed by the legislature about almost 10 years ago, approved by the voters in 2016. It's the state land trust that originally the state land trust, I think the distribution rate was 2.9% originally. And this Prop 123 increased it to 6.9 to account for some of the inflation that had not been paid. And it's up for renewal. So it was a 10-year proposition and that increased it to the 6.9 distribution rate, and everybody's coming in with their proposals. The governor in January introduced her proposal that increases it to 8.9% distribution with a breakdown of how that gets distributed. 2.5% of the 8.9 goes to general school funding, 4.4 goes to raising educator compensation, 1.5 increased support staff compensation, and 0.5% invested in safety, security, capital projects. We have even now Senate and House leaderships where they kind of came out at the beginning of the legislative session with a shared plan. They've kind of split with their resolutions a little bit. House is wanting to bring the current 6.9 down to 5.5. Senate's resolutions keep it at 6.9. And there's different thoughts on whether it should just go to teachers to increase teacher pay, or if there's some other distribution elements to it. And another component of the plans that are out there are that teachers whose performance is in the bottom two categories would not be eligible for any of those funds. So it gets a little convoluted, a little bit hard to track. But the concern more broadly is because there's such division about what the plan should look like, this barely passed in 2016. So if there's confusion and kind of a disconnected messaging between the legislature and the governor, and this goes to the voters again, it could very well not pass if there's not a consensus on what that plan should look like. Did I capture that? Okay. You missed it, but yes. Okay. All right.
Hey, CJ, on that real quick, do you know where the budget balance is? Have they maintained their capital of the state land trust money, or has it decreased? Has it increased?
The corpus has increased. It's increased, yes. That balance has increased. There's, without getting too far into, there's another element with the triggers. I don't know if that's what you were talking about back there, Ms. Hicks, but the concern with the trigger is that I'm trying to find it here. There's these contingencies in the original proposition language, and one is that the legislature, I believe FY26, can suspend these payments, reducing the K-12 funding if K-12 accounts for more 49%, they can reduce it to a certain amount. I can't remember what the reduction is. 50. Go ahead.
Yes, depending if it's 49% or 50%, could either not fund it at all or reduce it down.
Correct. So we're approaching these thresholds in terms of statewide spending for K-12, and that could result in a lot of this being moot if we hit those triggers, and that spending could be cut. So I took I thought ADM was more complicated, and I added some Arizona State government to the mix. But I stand for any questions. And again, this and more will be in the weekly report. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, moving on. Thank you. As we move on to the consent agenda, I would ask, is there anything anybody would like to have pulled? I would like to have pulled, because I didn't see something in there, the IGAs with member districts, item 2. I have a quick question.
Item 2.
On the consent agenda. The member districts, IGAs.
Gotcha.
Anything else? I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, everything but item number 2. And is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Ms. Bosom and seconded by Mr. Ramirez. Are we ready to vote? And do we want to do the IGA discussion first or after the other action items? I just have one quick question.
do it now. Let's just do it.
Yep. So my question is, on the money to member districts, we always used to talk about limiting that money to salaries. I didn't see anything about limiting the percentage of their money to teacher salaries. Because I know there's one district, I hate to pick on Paradise Valley, but they used 90% of that money for teacher salaries and they did very little to increase capital and equipment. How can we address that in the IGAs? We had talked about limiting it that way, and so that's what my concern was.
I don't know that we've changed anything since I've been here. CJ, do you know, we haven't changed anything since
We've not modified that language.
limited that.
So how did Greg control that, I guess, or Mr. Donovan? Because he always would tell the board that we're trying to work that down. And so I didn't see anything in there. I recall him having those conversations, and so that's where my question comes from.
Roll it. Based on what we give it back, when we get back to them, I guess.
I can't say, I know that this was a point of contention in the past with any member district using the CTED funding distribution to
supplant teacher salaries.
There's nothing in the IGA that restricts that. I think part of how that's mitigated is through additional supports that we provide and allowing for whether it's CTSO funding, whether it's PD, whether it's other supports that we provide. That gets funded first in addition to what those allocations are to member districts. But at the end of the day, there would be no way for us to prohibit a district from using those funds how they so choose.
Can we then, when we do this money, keep this, like almost have two buckets? This one is for everything in the IGA and this is more for equipment or something. I'm just looking for a way that I want to just make sure. I recall Glendale Union, they got rid of their automotives program because it was so outdated. It was too expensive to do anything. They said it was declining enrollment. I remember it was also, they weren't updating their equipment. Kind of this, I don't want to put member districts in this. They're not updating their equipment.
And
I have a 1960s spray booth.
Right.
It's no good.
In terms, that is built into the current formula that we hold back some of those funds so that districts can submit to West-MEC requests for grants. I think up to $150,000, somewhere around that, for that purpose. So we do protect some of those funds to account for equipment needs, facility upgrades, other special projects.
Okay. And then I'd ask Mr. Wells to have that conversation every year with the local directors, so we get a plan moving forward of being able to plan for what those equipment needs might be.
Yeah, and I would just like to see more equipment unless. I mean, teacher salaries are important, but. If they're teaching outdated equipment, what good is the program? So.
And CG, if I'm correct, I don't think statutorily there's a way for us to restrict what they spend that money on.
No, there's not statutorily.
Okay. All right, well, I'd entertain a motion to approve it, I guess.
And you guys need to refresh, because I moved it down to action discussion, so you can actually take a vote on this particular item.
Is there a motion to?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Mr. Ramirez, seconded by Mr. Garcia.
It's action discussion number 5.
So.
Did you refresh?
Did you refresh? Okay.
I just.
Where's the button?
I don't remember.
Yeah, if you refresh it, you'll have a new item number 5.
Oops, sorry.
There it is.
Snail mail.
Oh, circle. Oh, I bet you can try it out.
And you gotta go back to meetings. So it goes very bottom.
Yes.
Going meeting.
We should fund our teachers.
Going meeting, the very bottom. Going meeting.
If we can. Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. That's what I was.
No, it's all right.
Actually, it's a little closed one.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Moving on to action item number 1, H1. Recommendation and approval of the design phase services between core construction and West-MEC.
Good evening, Chairman Stratton, members of the board, Superintendent Spurgeon. January 10th, we announced the selection of Core Construction as our construction manager for the Southwest Campus project. Since then, a design phase services contract was drafted and reviewed by myself, Mr. Weeks, and our legal counsel. And tonight we're recommending a motion to approve that contract.
We get a motion and then we can have discussion.
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Miglerino. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ramirez. Any further discussion?
I'm sorry.
We'll take the question.
It was motion made by,
Mr. Miglerino, seconded by Mr. Ramirez. Okay, I'm
still waiting for Mr. Mick. Jim, did you put your vote in?
There it is. I had to go out of the contract.
So I have a question. You had us pull H3, but I think it's H2 that we needed to pull.
It's H2, yeah, and I typed in H2.
Okay, you typed in H2?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, because my notes said H3, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so we can move on to item H3. All right. So the reason I put this item on here is we've heard a few things about different policy services. We currently use ASBA. Last month, we had the trust come through and do a policy service presentation. And then tonight we had another one. I think we've seen 3 policy services. I would just like to hear from the board. Do you want to do anything? Do you want to just continue with ASBA? We don't need to do anything. Do you want to go to a different policy service? Of the 2 that we've seen, is there anything that interests you? And so that's really why this is on here. And the reason I think we need to, if we're going to change, we need to do it now is it's a lot on Ms. May's plate to convert policies by July 1st, because our contract with, if I'm correct, our contract with ASBN June 30th, everything's copyrighted. I know that there's a grace period from what I understand, but let's not make her work 30 hours a day to get this done by the end of June. Let's be able to, if we're going to do something. And that's really what I'd like to hear from the board. The thoughts.
I really like the Arizona After Coalition. I liked their plan for the policies. I think they're good. And it's probably more in line with what I'd like to see. Or I thought the Trust Alliance was. They were better than ASBA, but still, I don't like how everything is paraphrased. It's the same thing. And they changed the language. It doesn't mean the same thing as state statute.
Any other thoughts from anyone else on the board?
Well, I kind of lean toward the trust because they've been doing it longer. And that's the main thing. It's got more history. There's not, according to what she said tonight, unless I get it wrong, there's no school that they've just got members. I do like her legislative stuff, and I probably will become a member for that.
She's got excellent training.
Otherwise, I think we should do the other one to start with, and as they grow, we can change later.
Yeah, so here's the thought. I think I'm what I'm hearing you say, because it was my concern is I don't want to be an early adopter. I feel like the coalition, they only had one district maybe. But if they'd be $175 for all the members to be participants, would it make more sense to go with the trust and then just join the coalition as well for the training and their version of the policy? Because for the two, it's like $600, which is a fraction of what we're paying ASBA. Would that make sense to everybody?
How would that work again?
So I would say use the trust that came last month as the primary and coalition as the backup. We'd all be members, we'd get all the training, we could get their policy, and you could look at both policies and almost merge them together to create best in class, say. But my concern with the coalition, which I think is what I'm hearing from Barbara, is they really don't have somebody that's using their policy exclusively, except maybe someone in Mojave. The trusts.
No, it's good. Competition is great.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
And for the cost, I think it's a cost saving.
Just logically go with the one that's got 5 years or a little bit more established, at least for the first year. But go over to her for the legislative training and become.
And you get access to the policy as well.
Or $25. Yeah.
For the year. I like the way their policies are written. And they're closer to state statute and what they really mean. I would like to see them as the primary and use the Trust Alliance as secondary. And that's my thought. When I was really upset with is, looking at ASBA's policies and you'll read them, it's like, okay, blah, 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 blah. And then I started taking it and looking at what state statute actually says and compared to what they were, their interpretation of it. And it was just ridiculous.
So I'm trying to move this conversation along. Is anybody saying, I haven't heard anything, does anyone want to stay with ASBA? I'm not hearing that. So I would entertain a motion. I hear two different options. Coalition is primary, coalition is secondary. Would someone like to make a motion? We can vote on it. If it passes, great. If it fails, we can try the other way. If that fails, we would just stick with ASBA.
I'd like to make a motion to just give it ASBA, period. Anybody would second that?
I do the trust.
Okay. So,
One thing that, Chairman Strack, I'd like to clarify and make sure that the board understands, and I will follow up to be sure, is because if we keep Meritain Insurance, it is under ASBA, ASBA is under ASBA. So my understanding is that you can be just a member of ASBA and get the insurance, but not the policy services, which it sounds like your concern is, but I just want to confirm because we heard different things.
Thank you. I want to state that we stay with ASBA though, not for the policies.
Until we get,
Until we determine an insurance
Yeah, we
alternative.
can't
So
withdraw.
effective
Correct.
date would be beneficial. So if you want to establish an effective date, I have motion to discontinue membership with the Arizona School Boards Association, effective.
is it policy services or everything?
Or membership, because that's, your motion was to discontinue. But discontinue membership or you?
Chairman Straka,
Or-
sticking to the agenda item, I think it can only relate to policy services.
Right, so just the policy service policy, yes.
So you
And that's what I would,
amend your motion,
for policy services.
policy services.
Okay, so we're gonna do, so yours is to go with a different policy service, which I think everybody's, so are you amending her motion to make?
However you want to do it, I don't.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is July 1st?
By taking her recommendation automatically does what Ms. Fusen wants.
Yeah.
Recommendation is the coalition.
Coalition
Coalition.
first. and then, yeah.
And
Well,
trust second.
It would suspend policy service for ASBA if you. if-
No matter
But-
what, I would like,
Yeah,
ASBA.
by rule, yeah,
It's not policy service.
absolutely.
but we have both of them, but I better stick closer to state statute than, you know.
I don't know, I agree with that.
So Ms. Wiley, are you saying a motion? for-
So your motion is to do coalition primary, trust as secondary,
Yes.
which would by default move out ASBA.
Correct.
Is there a second for that motion?
Robert, second,
I'll second it.
I thought he did.
So what are we doing?
So so the motion is on policy services.
Only.
Only,
Drawing from ASBA.
just policy services,
Policy
but by
services.
going with someone else, we would.
Right.
As Dr. Spurgeon points out, by rules, if you're going somewhere else, you've withdrawn. So coalition, which is the one tonight, is primary. And the trust, which was last month, would be secondary. And it's been moved by Ms. Bosom and seconded by Mr. Garcia.
Just for clarification, since you are a member, should you be allowed to make that motion? Just asking. No. I just don't want to put you in hot water because
Well, yeah.
or
I
voting.
don't think they have.
Because you can be a member, it's just like we're members of ASBA. There is no fine, if you're not a member receiving a salary, it would be okay. And if it's a public corporation, we know you have to have 3% of the stock. To be a conflict of interest, so I assume you don't own 3% of.
Not at all.
Yeah. So so we're open for discussion. My thought would be, I would like to see that motion reversed, but that's the only reason I would stand against it. I like both of them. I just think we should go with the more established as our primary. And that's my 2 cents, and I'd like to say here.
We know how much we're spending by doing this, but do we increase our cost at all?
Actually, it goes down. We're spending 8,000 a year for.
Some odd dollars with ASBA, and she just presented that it was gonna be 2,500 with, is that what the amount was on their presentation? With, no, 2,500 with the Arizona Coalition, and it's a lot less with the trust. What's the amount for the trust?
Again, it's $2,500.
Right, yeah.
Save money today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can do both for less than
$25.
what we're paying for ASBA.
Remember.
And that's why I'm like, let's do both, but which one do you want the primary?
But she quoted a fee of 2,500 for the overhaul and to basically put the.
For the policy.
Policies.
That membership was $25 a year. Policy was.
But there is the policy, I think it was 1,000 and 5,000. 1,000 if you just have a light view and 5,000 if you have a full overhaul. But to be real honest, this way it's arranged by ASBA and the numbering system, it's gonna be an overhaul. At the end of the day, that's my gut feeling.
And then that was gonna, Chairman Straka, that was gonna be my question. So whoever we end up going with, they would come in and overhaul all of the policy?
They would map
Well,
it.
basically, so I can share with you because I've lived through this already. So what you will more than likely be advised to do is to rescind your current policies. But after you've already done work to establish and go through the new policies. So once those are ready to go and adopt, and you can do it, and she explained that, the trust representatives explained that you can basically review them section by section, chapter by chapter. First, and then once you get it to where you want to adopt, you would rescind all your policies and then adopt all the policies in one, or you can rescind and adopt as you go along. So there's different ways that you can do it, but that communication would be with the entity that you go with.
So how do you do that if you have 2 people?
Well, you would work on the primary one. So whoever is the primary, that's the one we would go through and map. And then the secondary, we would just take their version of that policy and compare the two to get the West-MEC version.
It's a job.
Well, yeah, like I said, what I don't like is that they, you know, they are a little bit better than ASPA, but they are not there yet. And I don't really care for when they start paraphrasing things.
Okay,
So we have a motion on the floor.
if we have a motion on the floor, is there any other discussion?
So if you can make sure that I got the motion correct on there, motion to discontinue policy services with the Arizona School Board Association and go with the Coalition of School Board Members, Policy Services. Motion made by Linda and seconded by Robert.
Yeah, and then the secondary would be the trust. Primary, we would go with coalition for the policy and then just use the trust as secondary.
We use the trust as. You're gonna pay for both.
Well, you're gonna pay for both either way. It's like $495
You're
and
gonna have two
$175.
policy, right, you're gonna have two policy manuals.
Withdraw from ASB.
No, what Mr. Straka was saying was if you went with the trust as a primary, you could be a member of the coalition and access their training. In addition to what you already received, which was a benefit to allow them time to actually become more settled as an organization. Because they just have the one district that they're working with versus the trust, which is, we think is a better policy service than ASBA.
But I would say both of them are better than ASBA, but my opinion is the trust is more established. I always look at, do you want to be an early adopter? And that's really with our policy services. This one, they haven't done a JTED yet. The trust has, so that was just my 2 cents, but
Right now.
let's just go with the motion is using coalition for our policy. And we could join the trust as a secondary, but so the motion is, do we want to join coalition? So if there's no more discussion.
This motion is to basically use the coalition as your policy services.
Yeah, as opposed to the trust.
And so it's open up.
Who seconded that?
You probably want an effective.
Oh, and the effective would be July 1st.
Robert Garcia. Okay, I added effective July 1st. It's gonna pop up.
So this one would fail. All right.
So we need a motion to.
So we would need a motion. Would you guys like to consider the trust and then also membership to the coalition for training as well as to you could access their policies?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay,
What was that motion?
so the motion would be instead of coalition, we would join the trust, which was here last month. But we would also join the coalition
As
to,
members.
as members to have the training, and then you could also access their policy services. We could monitor them and see how they're doing over year, and if we want to switch. They're very similar numbering systems, it'd be much easier to switch.
You don't have to really actually go ahead and compare each policy and compare it to state statute to make sure that it says this.
Is that putting the burden on the West-MEC team to actually have to look through all this stuff?
It puts the burden on the board. It actually puts the burden on the board because West-MEC staff would go through the trust and we would have coalition policy access. So if we want to, on top of that, review, let's say it's ADM policy. You could take the two and we could look at the two and say, hey, I'd like to redline this because I saw it over here. So as board, we're putting the burden on the board members.
But again, if you're comparing it to the coalition, you're only looking at the policies that they have on their website. It's not tailored to West-MEC. And that's what I liked.
Ms. Garcia, if you remember when she brought up the training opportunities, they brought in some experts on fraud and things like that. As a member, you would have access to that additional training as well.
I think for the $25 a year, it's a good investment.
Yeah, that's a great deal.
I mean, that's for the trust.
Great deal.
Was that made by,
No, the coalition, $25 per person.
by you, or was it a motion?
A motion by Mr. McLarino, seconded by Ms. Wiley.
The date certain though.
And the date would be July 1st again?
Yeah, so here I put it up, motion right there, motion to discontinue policy services with the Arizona School Boards Association and go with the trust model policy services effective July 1st and become members of the Arizona Coalition of School Boards.
Right, any further discussion?
Yeah, that's a question,
Go for it before you vote.
yeah. So this option, like, Mr. Garcia was saying, basically, we would have to do the cross-referencing, right? The trust is primary, now we're having to do the homework of comparing with the policy provided by the coalition.
That way we'll be reading the policy.
We would have to do the same thing with the first motion, correct? It's just the sources
This one is
switched.
switched, yeah.
The trust would be less work because they've already worked with CTED, which means they would already have policies aligned for parent education centers. There'd be less work going with the trust than with the other one.
They have
I disagree with that. I think that, you know, because what really matters is policy, state statute. And if you're having to go back and check every little sentence and compare it to state statute to see what does it really say? And that's what I was appalled when I was looking at ASBA's policies. And I don't think that the coalitions is that much different. Or I know that.
Well, as we start to go through it, we'll begin to see, and then we might determine in a year, hey, we're thrilled with what we've seen with coalition. But again, my concern is early adopter. I don't want to put our policy services at risk because she couldn't answer she seemed to know exactly what she was doing, but that my concern is there isn't really for sure a district that's using it.
Well, my concern is also, well, personally, I wasn't here at the last meeting. I was out for a family matter. I'd be okay with, if it's okay with everybody else, if this doesn't pass, waiting a week just to look more into the two different plans, getting a little bit more information, asking questions, and if it's okay, if this doesn't pass, setting a meeting next week, next Wednesday, just for a vote. If this doesn't pass.
Okay, well, let's see. So the motion fails.
No motion. Oh, wait, motion failed.
Motion fails because we still need 4 votes. Yeah. All right, well, when we get to future agenda items, we can discuss what we want to do, but at this point, I'm not going to waste any more time. All right. Moving on to item number 4. Ms. Mays. Fringe benefits.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Straka, members of the board again. What you have before you is the recommendation to approve the work agreement for adult ed instructors. Back in February, we brought the contract language for counselors, administrators, instructors, and the notice of pay, kind of like for classified staff. So our attorney asked for more time to review the adult ed instructor work agreement. And so that's what you have before you this evening.
So, and this is getting us out of the contract situation, so they serve at will.
That is correct. It is an at-will work agreement, as opposed to the same contract that the other instructors, the high school instructors have.
And is this the same, so how is this different than like classified staff, because they're also a work agreement?
It is an exempt work, so they will be exempt employees, so they're not subject to overtime.
Okay.
What drove the decision to create this contract? I'm assuming this is the first time, would be the first time
I do believe that the adult ed instructors had an at-will work agreement, but it was similar to classified staff.
Mhm.
The attorney and I felt that it really didn't match a classified staff member's what's expected of them, how they're evaluated. But yet they're not covered by the same provisions in Title 15 in terms of contractual rights as the high school teachers. And that's because they don't have to be certified to be an adult ed instructor. So the attorney felt that since they're not certified staff, they really should be separated from the high school instructors for that very reason. But yet you did want them to be exempt because obviously our teachers work more than 8 hours a day, and for various reasons, it's better for them and for the district to be on an exempt contract, but the at will, so they're not under those various provisions of Title 15.
As an example, and tell me if this is correct or not. Let's say we have an EMT instructor. EMT is 1 semester. 100 kids sign up for the first semester. Nobody signs up for the next semester. We can say, hey, we don't have a 1-year contract. You're done. We don't have any students. The flip side would be, we don't have any students. We have to pay you the rest of the year. Is that correct?
That is one of the reasons that is to the district's advantage, is to have that flexibility as enrollments shift.
Okay.
That's correct. And Maryland just brought up EMT is a 1-year. It is a 1-year.
Fire, which the one, there's one that's
It used to be.
a semester, okay.
Semester, but it did, students weren't making it all the way through the program, so they turned it into a 1-year.
So the attorney just asked for more time to review it and make sure that we had the right provisions and that those employees' rights were still protected, but that the district had that additional flexibility.
Then if they're not on a contract, and we have 12-month employees, 11-month employees, 10-month employees, how does an at-will get benefits?
They still will have them, you mean medical benefits?
Well, as far as, I think 10-month employees don't get vacation. Some things accrue based on the number of months you work in the year.
Yes.
So an at-will, how does their accrual work? What number of months is assumed?
Back their accrual, so since they're 11 months, they would still get the same accrual that they have right now. Because right now they don't get vacation either.
Okay.
They just get,
So does it define that the accrual is on an 11-month calendar year in here?
yes.
Okay.
How many courses do we have that are like at risk for this bill, for this rule?
Our adult ed instructor led courses, see. I don't have that exact number but I can get that for you. But you figure the evening programs that we have, those would be primarily the teachers that would switch to this new agreement.
And how do you think the teachers will take to this? The adult ed teachers that would have to sign this?
That's a great question, Ms. Wiley. They really won't see much of a change. Their salary is not gonna change. Their leave agreement or leave accrual is not gonna change. The biggest thing that's gonna change is just their rights under Title 15. And, and some may look at it as it does put them somewhat more at risk in certain situations, like in Mr. Straka's example, or if there's an issue with their performance, it may be handled slightly different because they don't have those same protections as Title 15 teachers. So they may feel that might be a disadvantage to them. But in terms of what they'll see outright, it won't be much of a difference.
And this is more like how the private sector works. You work at the pleasure of the corporation or the organization. You do a good job, you stick around. You don't do a good job, you don't get to stay the rest of the year.
So.
In Arizona.
Yeah, you're not a union. If you're a union, you couldn't be there. So we have that advantage. My concern, and I'm not disagreeing or agreeing, I'm just saying my concern is we do have a hard enough time finding instructors. And these are not teachers that are not, these are harder teachers to find in the regular market because of the nature of our business. So that's the only concern I would have is
I guess I would flip it around and say, if I was a instructor, aviation, and I'm working hard and I see this person over here is slacking off and they can't do anything about it, I'm gonna leave because you're not addressing the poor and performing employee because
Well-
they're sticking around. So I mean, you could make the case either way, is my point.
I would argue that in this, again, in this industry, in education. Most teachers aren't looking at the math class from the English class saying you have only 10 students and I got 50. I should get more money than you should be fired. They're not doing that because everyone's industry sector. If you're a professional, and if I came from Boeing and I ran my own shop and I retired and said, well, West-MEC hire me to be a night instructor. Now I'm worth money. I'm worth money when I left and I'm worth money now. And with that mentality. So when you hire them and we don't have a class for them all, whose responsibility is to recruit? Do I put a recruiting hat and go to high schools and say, come to my class, come to my class, come to my class? Who's responsible is to fill those classrooms? So if we have an agreement in place, because I said I'm work for you and I'm worth something, I'm not gonna be excited to sign a paper saying, oh, by the way, if you don't fill the class, we can't use you and this is gonna be null and void. Then you just wasted my time and I'm valued because I left Boeing and I ran my own department. I'm worth millions of dollars. I decided to help you out with your program. How is that gonna coerce that individual
So
to come work for?
I would say the instructor makes a difference. And so your predecessor was Charlie Ellis. He resigned and started teaching construction at Northeast Campus for years. We couldn't get more than 6 or 8 kids in that class. He now has 24 kids and it's growing. And that is because a good instructor, word of mouth gets around. And you will the first year we might struggle, but if you're a good instructor, everyone's gonna know. And what's gonna happen is you're not gonna have enough where it's like, Robert, do you know a friend? Because we need another guy like you because we have 80 kids signed up.
Well, I actually know a couple of instructors here that are working for West-MEC, so I'm very familiar. I'm just saying, again, I'm not for or against, I'm just saying that from the context of it, if it's not needed, then why are we discussing it? Because if you're saying that the instructors make the classroom and they're always gonna have a full classroom, then why are we addressing something that doesn't?
This is coming to us from a recommendation of administration. There is a need. It might not be something we can discuss because it might be personnel related.
Oh, I see.
And so this would make things easier in the future.
I'll make a motion.
Also, if the person, the teacher
Go ahead, the motion.
likes it and he or she is a good teacher and they're happy. And maybe they're retired and, oh, well, if it doesn't fill up next semester, it'll be okay. And I'll just, I go both ways. So.
The other critical difference I'd like for the board to consider is that the evaluation process for adult ed instructors is different from our high school instructors. And if you think about it, our high school instructors, the reason that their evaluation looks differently, and they have, I don't want to necessarily say higher expectations, but it's a much more formal, much more complex evaluation tool itself. Whereas the adult instructors have a different evaluation tool. In addition to that, our adult ed instructors don't receive performance pay the same as
They don't get Prop 301 money, so that's all those contractual things
So
change.
there are already a lot of differences built in place, and they don't have to be certificated as well. They may have to have their industry credentials.
Yeah, so there's a lot of exceptions to
ADE certificate.
So Drago, one last thing, I know you made a motion, but also keep in mind that we can't use M&O funding for adult education. We have to have a certain number of students in the class in order to make, so we can actually pay our expenses for the teacher being in that classroom. If they're on contract and if they're not at will, then we have to pay them for the full year and we have no funding to do that. So there's gotta be a certain number of students inside the classroom that generate the funding to pay for that.
And they'll understand that coming in.
You have to understand that.
Yeah.
Right now, when they're on contract, we can't do anything about that. And so we have to make a change because we can't use M&O funding, which has been used in the past. We can't do that anymore moving forward. That if we don't have X number of students in the classroom, whether that's the number is 10 or 12 or 15, whatever it is, we have to have the ability to say financially, we can't make this class.
Chairman Strzok, I'd like to make a motion to approve the notice of employment language, including fringe benefit packages for adult education instructors for the 2024-2025 school year.
Is there a second?
And do you want to authorize the superintendent to adjust the employee work week during July like we did with the last ones? That's added in the motion.
That was for non-teaching. But would we ever adjust teachers for a 4-10 work week?
Robert made the motion first. Robert Garcia, you motioned first.
Oh, I did.
Did you make a
No,
motion?
that was Juan. That wasn't me.
Juan made the motion first. I heard. I
Yeah,
did.
Juan made the motion first.
Is there, so who seconded?
So it's like it, no.
I'll second.
I already did.
Oh, you already did. Then we got it. Wow.
All right, it's.
You can
All right.
vote on it.
Ready for the vote?
And that's just 5 this
Been up since 2:30.
morning.
Did it come up?
There it is.
I think the Wi-Fi is getting tired.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
There's some freeze-dried Skittles over there.
So I motion.
All right. That brings us on future agenda items.
Yes, I'd like to, a future agenda item is to add a vote in a week, next Wednesday, to give some of us, speaking personally for myself, to look deeper into the options we have for the policy services. Oh.
Are you saying
You'd like to reconsider it, but you want to do some research, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so
Is it something we would need to do before April, or could we put it in the April agenda? Are you guys okay to do it in April after? Yep, okay. Well, let's
so
just,
additional informational policy services for the April agenda?
so did that meeting get recorded? Could Mr. Ramirez
Yes,
watch
it
it?
is on YouTube.
Yeah,
It's at the very
okay.
beginning.
well, yeah, IT showed me where it was because I couldn't find it on the main page, the videos tab.
Very good. Any other future agenda items?
I have one. Oh, good. So I was thinking, so when we're getting close to the end of the school year. I would like to see if we can do something, a announcement or a video for the student bodies that's enlisted in the military. If they're already enlisted, they're ready to go after high school, after completion of courses. I'd like to see if we can get a video of them played to all of our schools in respect to their commitment to service to our country.
That's maybe not an agenda item, but it'd be a nice thing to see. Yep.
How to do it.
Yep. Mr. Miglorino.
As some of the older board members may remember, I've always had an interest in our adult education program. And after reading some of the emails from Ms. Brown, including your presentation about our high school students, their achievements, how they can start at 40 to 77. I would like to know about the achievement of our adult education. Just like a brief report. I don't need a 3-hour synopsis.
Even just a nice personal story.
Yeah, you know, how are we doing it all? Have we increased it over the last 2 or 3 years? What kind of starting salaries might they expect? And what are some of the good things that are going on? Thank you.
Second that.
All right, anything else? All right, so I've been informed that we need to have a motion to adjourn. And a second, and we have to call for a vote. So it's been moved by Ms. Bosom, seconded by Mr. Garcia. All in favor? Aye.
I'm so tired right now. Motion by Clinton, and it was seconded by who?
Me.
Mr. Garcia. And it passed by a unanimous voice vote. Right. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, nay. Not motion passes.
You wanna take these Skittles with you, or you wanna keep them, can we get leave them here?
I have 3 bags at home, so whoever wants some,
Leave them upstairs.
Yeah.
Upstairs on. I think if I sit here with freeze dried Skittles.
there's freeze dried everything. Go to the farmer's market on Sunday mornings in Anthem. They have like 5 tables of different stuff. I assume they're there every week.